Chapter 750. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing's face turned slightly red. He didn't expect LV Hushan to have seen through this, and even said it out loud. This made him very embarrassed. However, although Yuan Weiqing felt embarrassed, he also knew that even if it was embarrassing, he still had to finish his words. Otherwise, would he really have to go up and block Yi Tianhua alone? Yuan Weiqing composed himself and said with a forced smile, LV Hushan, why would you think that? I won't do that. The reason why I left you in front is because I don't want to take advantage of you. LV Hushan, think about it. If those spiritual herbs were distributed according to contribution, then how many spiritual herbs would I get if I was in front? At this point, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, you have to think clearly. If I stand in front of you, my contribution will be much greater than yours. At that time, I can guarantee you that you won't be able to get much of the elixirs. Maybe you can even get 10% of it. Don't you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan couldn't help but frown. Yuan Weiqing, are you saying that I can only get a little bit of the spiritual herbs? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, think about it. Up until now, how much contribution have you made? Do you think 10% of the spiritual herbs is too little? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget how Hongda and the others were defeated. If it wasn't for me, how could it be so easy? Isn't this a contribution? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, it's because you made such a small contribution that I'm giving you 10% of the spiritual herbs. Otherwise, I'm afraid that you wouldn't even have a share of this. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, if I stayed behind a fight, wouldn't it be a contribution? Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, what do you think? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan hurriedly turned around and looked at Zhang Chunren. Deputy Head Zhang, say something. Will it be considered a contribution if I stay behind? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren sighed and slowly said, LV Hushan, you also know that among us, your martial arts are the weakest. If you stay behind, think about it. Even if we catch Yi Tianhua, how much strength can you contribute? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. After a while, he asked in a trembling voice, Viceholm Master Zhang, although my martial arts are the weakest, my technique of throwing the thunderbolt pill is very strong. I believe that even if I stay at the back, I will play a great role. Viceholm Master Zhang, if you only give me a little contribution, isn't that a little unfair? Zhang Chunren sneered as he shook his head. LV Hushan, don't you think this is fair enough? Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, you have to understand that with your martial arts, without us, it is absolutely impossible for you to catch Yi Tianhua. And you staying behind is even more dispensable. Even without you, do you think that Halm Master Shui and I together won't be able to catch Yi Tianhua? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, LV Hushan, Viceholm Master Zhang is right. In fact, both of our martial arts are very weak. Naturally, we won't be of much use. LV Hushan, think about it. If Viceholm Master Zhang and Hall Master Shui stay at the front while the two of us stay behind, do you think that with our techniques and martial arts, we can catch Yi Tianhua? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned once again. Although she didn't want to admit it, she had to admit that if what Yuan Weiqing said was true, Home Master Shui and Viceholm Master Zhang would stay in the front while the two of them would stay behind to attack. If that was really the case, LV Hushan really had no confidence in catching Yi Tianhua. Yuan Weiqing saw that LV Hushan lowered his head and remained silent. He sighed. LV Hushan, now that things have come to this, you should also understand that our martial arts are the weakest. We're the most suitable to block the front. Although Yi Tianhua's martial arts are strong, don't forget that he might not be able to attack us with all his might. This is our chance. As long as we seize this opportunity, we will definitely be able to block Etienne's attack. LV Hushan, don't hesitate. Stand at the front with me. There will definitely be no problem. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, I can stay at the front, but you have to promise me that if I stay at the front, when it is time to split the spiritual medicine, we will split it equally. What do you think? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to reply, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, if you agree to this, then I will promise you that I will stay at the front. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown. He persuaded LV Hushan to stay not because he wanted to split the spiritual medicine equally with him, but because he wanted to use LV Hushan to share some of Etienne's attacks. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing was frowning, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, I knew you were lying to me. Even if I stay at the front, you will not split the spiritual medicine equally with me. Since that is the case, I have decided to back out. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Chunren suddenly said, LV Hushan, since you said so, then I promise you. As long as you stay at the front, you and Yuan Weiqing can split the spiritual medicine equally. Is that okay? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, as long as you keep your word, I will stay at the front and block Etienne for you. Although LV Hushan was happy, Yuan Weiqing was not satisfied. This was because if he and LV Hushan split the spiritual medicine equally, he would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing would definitely not agree. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this isn't fair. My arm has already suffered such a heavy injury, and I'm also in the front. If I still have to share the spiritual herbs with LV Hushan, then wouldn't I be at a disadvantage? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown. He slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, now that things have come to this, we have to look at the big picture. You and LV Hushan's martial arts are not high. If either of you stay, it is very likely that Etienne will break through the defense line. Only if the two of you work together can you block Etienne's attack. Therefore, I think that Yuan Weiqing, even if you are at a disadvantage, in order to catch Etienne, I think this is it. Don't argue anymore. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? My arm is so badly injured, and I still have to split the spiritual medicine equally with him. No matter what, I will not agree. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Zhang Chunren frowned. He lowered his voice and said, Yuan Weiqing, if you don't agree, then you will have to stand at the front alone. Are you confident that you can block Etienne's attack? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's face suddenly changed. He said in a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? Etienne is very skilled in martial arts. How can I block him alone? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Zhang Chunren sighed. Yuan Weiqing, if LV Hushan backs out, then you will have to stand at the front alone. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing asked in a trembling voice. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can it be me alone? Don't I have you? As long as the two of us stand at the front, I believe that no matter how skilled Etienne is, he will not be able to break through our defense line. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can this be? If I stand at the front, then who will attack Etienne? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Xue Zhijing and said in a low voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, isn't there still Hall Master Xue? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren's reply and continued to speak. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Hall Master Xue knows the Heavenly Star technique. Even if he stands at the back alone, he will definitely be able to catch Etienne. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, do you really think that Hall Master Xue can catch Etienne alone? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, this is impossible. Etienne is skilled in martial arts. Hall Master Shui alone will not be able to catch Etianhua. We will have to work together to catch Etianhua. Don't you understand? When Yuan Weiqing heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I don't think so. Although Etianhua's martial arts are strong, Hall Master Shui's martial arts are not bad either. In addition, he has a secret technique. Perhaps he really can catch Etianhua alone. Zhang Chunren shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this is not a small matter. If we can't catch Etianhua, all our plans will be in vain. Do you understand? Therefore, in order to increase our chances of success, we have to treat this matter seriously. Whether or not Hall Master Shui can capture Etianhua alone, I have to stay and work with him, because only by doing so will we have a greater chance of success. Yuan Weiqing, do you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Hall Master Shui just said that as long as he stands at the back alone, he can defeat Etianhua. Why don't we believe him? Speaking to this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Zhang Chunren to answer and continued. Vice Hall Master Zhang, listen to me. If LV Hushan is not willing to participate, let him go. With the two of us in front, there will be no problem. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Etianhua harmed your son, so he must feel very guilty towards you. He will not be too harsh on you, so don't worry. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren's expression changed. He sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, do you think that I'm staying behind because I'm afraid? Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He snorted coldly and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, this is impossible. Why would I be afraid? Etianhua harmed my son. If he wants to harm me again, then let him come. I don't care. Yuan Weiqing, as for you, why don't you stand at the front alone? Are you afraid? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Hall Master Zhang, how could that be? If I was afraid, I would not have attacked Etianhua. Am I right, Vice Hall Master Zhang? Saying this, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. If he had known that Etianhua's martial arts were so strong, he would not have attacked Etianhua. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction. Yuan Weiqing, I know that you're not afraid. If you were really afraid, you would not have attacked Etianhua. So, I need you to stand at the front. Do you agree? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. After a while, he asked tentatively, Vice Hall Master Zhang, do you really want me, a cripple, to stand at the front? As he said this, Yuan Weiqing deliberately stretched out his broken arm and waved it in front of Zhang Chunren. Seeing Yuan Weiqing's injured arm, Zhang Chunren frowned. After a while, he lowered his voice and said, Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. Let LV Hushan join in. The two of you will stand at the front together. Only then will you have a chance of winning. Do you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if LV Hushan and I stand at the front together, he wants to share the elixirs with me. I will never agree. His contribution is not as great as mine. If he wants to share, I can only give him 10 to 20%. If he gets more, won't I be at a disadvantage? After hearing this, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. He said loudly, Yuan Weiqing, how am I taking advantage of you? Everyone is standing at the front together. Our contribution is the same. How am I taking advantage of you? Yuan Weiqing, if you don't want to, I can withdraw. However, I will never think that I am taking advantage of you. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He sneered and said, LV Hushan, since you said that you are not taking advantage of me, then you should break one of your arms. This way, I won't think that you are taking advantage of me. What do you think? You? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly flew into a rage. He shouted, Yuan Weiqing, you are too unreasonable. Your arm was injured by Etianhua. You can only blame yourself for not being good enough. How can you blame me? Your arm is injured. Does my arm have to be injured too? Chapter 751. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, if you want to share the spiritual herbs with me, then this is the only way. If you agree, then I will stand in front of you and fight against Tianhua together. LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said, Yuan Weiqing, do you want me to break an arm before you're satisfied? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you're wrong. This is not to satisfy me, but to be fair. Do you understand? What I want is fairness. Since you want to share the elixirs with me, then the injuries we suffer should be the same, right? LV Hushan sneered and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, I won't break my arm for no reason. If you dare to stand in front of Tianhua alone, then I won't stop you. I won't share the spiritual herbs with you either. What do you think? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and then said angrily, LV Hushan, what do you mean by this? Originally, I wanted you to stand in front of me. How did it become me standing in front of you? LV Hushan sighed. I originally wanted to share the spiritual herbs with you, but you didn't agree. Then why did I step forward? Don't you think so? Seeing that the two of them were getting more and more tense, Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, You two, stop arguing. Let me say something. Speaking up to here, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for the two of them to answer him. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, the two of you stand in front of me. When it's time to split the spiritual herbs, Yuan Weiqing will get 60% and LV Hushan will get 40%. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Vice Master Zhang, my arm is broken. Why is it only 10%? I don't agree. Speaking up to here, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer him. He snorted and continued. Vice Master Zhang, if you let me agree, I will get 70% and LV Hushan will get 30%. Is this okay? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, you must be dreaming. You can have 70%, but I will have 30%. Don't even think about it. LV Hushan turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and said with a sneer, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, if we divide according to Yuan Weiqing's words, then I will get 40% less than him. I will never agree. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, LV Hushan, you think I got too much? Do you think I suffered the injury on my arm for nothing? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I'm not an unreasonable person. If you had a bit more than me, I wouldn't have minded. But you have 4 levels more than me. How could I agree? Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, since LV Hushan thinks that your share is too much, then you will still get 60%, and he will get 40%, and you will get 20% more than him. Isn't that good? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, my arm is already crippled. If I can't get more elixirs, then my contribution will be in vain. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, how can your contribution be in vain? Don't forget, you'll get 20% more elixirs than me. What is there to be dissatisfied with? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, LV Hushan, if you want, we can divide it equally. As long as you promise me that you will break your arm, then we will have a deal. What do you think? LV Hushan shook his head. Nothing. Your arm was broken because of you. It has nothing to do with me. Why should I break my arm? Just to make you happy? What a joke. Yuan Weiqing nodded. LV Hushan, if you want to make me unhappy, then I will get 70% of the elixirs, and you can only get 30%. Will that make you happy? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan said with some annoyance, Yuan Weiqing, I have already said that you will get 70% of the elixirs, and I will get 30%. I will never agree to this division. Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, if you don't agree, then you can only break your arm, so we can divide it equally. LV Hushan gritted his teeth. Yuan Weiqing, let me ask you, if I also break my arm, you will be satisfied, but how will we resist Tianhua? Hearing these words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Only then did he remember that the battle had not yet begun. If LV Hushan also broke his arm, then how could they resist Tianhua? Seeing that Yuan Weiqing did not speak, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, The battle has not yet begun. It seems meaningless for us to talk about this. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren also smiled and said, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan is right. I think everything should wait until the battle is over. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I can promise you, but you also have to promise me that after the battle, if LV Hushan is not seriously injured, then I will get 70% of the elixirs. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly became angry. Yuan Weiqing, the battle has not yet begun, and you want to divide the spoils. I will never agree. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He sneered and said, LV Hushan, I am just saying this in advance. If someone does not admit it, then it will be troublesome. LV Hushan turned his head and glared at Yuan Weiqing. He said angrily, Everyone is standing in the front. Why should you get more and I get less? Yuan Weiqing raised his broken arm and said with a sneer, LV Hushan, based on this, do you have it? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his words, he snorted coldly and continued. LV Hushan, if you're not convinced, you can also become like me. I naturally will not compete with you. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was so angry that his breathing became rapid. He suddenly turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and asked anxiously, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I will listen to you. Tell me, after the battle is over, how should we divide it? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked tentatively, Yuan Weiqing, I think you should lower your conditions a little. What do you think? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, we haven't caught Etianhua yet. You should agree first. After we catch Etianhua, it won't be too late for us to talk about these things. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if some things are not made clear first, it will be very troublesome when the time comes, so I think that we should make things clear first and do what we should do. Otherwise, after the battle is over, some people will feel that they are at a disadvantage. At that time, it will be difficult to talk about it. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered. Without waiting for Zhang Chunren to speak, he said first, Yuan Weiqing, I think the one who is afraid of being at a disadvantage is you. No matter what, if you want me to participate in the battle and block Tianhua, then we can only split it equally. Otherwise, don't even think about making me agree. When Yuan Weiqing heard this, he immediately said angrily, LV Hushan, if you don't want to participate, then forget it. No one is forcing you. If you don't participate, then it's good. No one will fight with me for the spiritual herbs. Hearing this, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, you said it yourself. When Tianhua attacks you later, don't regret it. Seeing that the two were quarreling again, Zhang Chunren could only frown and say, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the two of you stop talking. Is there anything you can't discuss? LV Hushan said angrily, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I want to discuss it with him, but he doesn't want to discuss it with me. What can I do? Yuan Weiqing sneered. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if he really wants to discuss it, then let's do it according to my distribution method. In short, my injuries can't be in vain. They have to be included in the contribution. Otherwise, I won't accept it. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, I understand what the two of you mean. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for the two to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, because your arm is injured, you think that your contribution is greater and you want to get more, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded. Of course. Otherwise, wouldn't my injuries be in vain? Vice Hall Master Zhang, you have to make a decision for me. Don't let him take advantage of me. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly became angry. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Chunren hurriedly waved his hand and interrupted him. LV Hushan, don't say anything. Let me ask you. You mean that you want to stand in front and wait until the battle is over? Then you and Yuan Weiqing will share the spiritual herbs equally, right? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, of course. Everyone fought together. Of course, we will get the same amount of spiritual herbs. What's so strange about this? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said angrily, LV Hushan, my arm is injured. Why can't I get a little more? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, if you just want a little more, I have nothing to say. But if you want to get 40% more than me, I will never agree. Hearing this, Zhang Chunrin waved his hand, indicating that the two should stop talking. Then he slowly said, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the problem that the two of you are struggling with is nothing more than how much spiritual herbs can be divided. This is a small matter. The most important thing for us now is how to catch Etianhua. Otherwise, it's useless no matter what we say. Don't you understand? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan wants to take advantage of me. How can I agree? LV Hushan sneered and said, Yuan Weiqing, you want 40% more spiritual herbs than me. Do you think I will agree? Zhang Chunrin waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, how about this? You two have a good discussion about how to divide it. It is the most reasonable. Speaking until here, Zhang Chunrin's tone paused. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and continued. Yuan Weiqing, you tell me. How much do you want to get 70% of the spiritual herbs? Are you satisfied? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I don't think that 70% of the elixirs is much. Don't forget I've lost an arm. Could it be that my arm isn't worth this price? After hearing this, Zhang Chunrin nodded but did not answer. Instead, he turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked in a deep voice, LV Hushan, what do you think? How much of the spiritual herbs do you want? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, LV Hushan frowned. After a while, he slowly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I am a reasonable person. Yuan Weiqing's arm is injured, so it is reasonable for him to get more elixirs. However, I also participated in the battle. You can't give me less. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused and continued. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think it is better to give me 40% of the spiritual herbs. What do you think? Hearing the answer of the two, Zhang Chunrin nodded and said faintly, LV Hushan, you want 40% of the spiritual herbs. Yuan Weiqing, you want 70% of the spiritual herbs, right? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you are right. Zhang Chunrin glanced at the two people in front of him and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, this matter is easy to solve. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunrin's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for the two to answer his words, he continued. This matter is settled. Yuan Weiqing, you get 70% of the spiritual herbs. LV Hushan, you get 40% of the spiritual herbs. Isn't this matter settled? What else is there to argue about? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, everyone present was taken aback. Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan exclaimed at the same time, Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can this be? Zhang Chunrin waved his hand. What's wrong with that? Let's divide all the elixirs into 11 portions. Yuan Weiqing, you get 7 portions. LV Hushan, you get 4 portions. Isn't that enough? What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were stunned on the spot. For a moment, they were speechless. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Zhang Chunrin frowned. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, are you not satisfied with my distribution method? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunrin's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for the two of them to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, don't forget, you were the ones who asked for the percentage of the elixirs. I've already satisfied your request. Isn't that enough? What else are you dissatisfied with? Chapter 752. Hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, Although Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan both got a satisfactory share, they felt like they had suffered a loss. However, they couldn't figure out where they had suffered a loss. They could only stare blankly at Zhang Chunren, unable to speak for a while. Seeing that the two of them were silent, Zhang Chunren coughed lightly and slowly said, "Since you have no objections, then let's do it this way. The two of you will block the front, Home Master Shui, and I will attack Tianhua from behind. Do you understand?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan nodded blankly. Seeing that the two of them finally stopped quarreling and agreed to his suggestion, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Shui Zhijing and said with a smile, "Home Master Shui, the matter has been resolved. The two of us will stay behind to attack Tianhua, while the two of them will block the front. This will prevent Tianhua from breaking through their defense and directly attacking the two of us. What do you think?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing nodded. "Okay, since you have agreed, then it's decided." At this point, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer him and continued speaking. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, when we attack later, you will be on the left and I will be on the right. We will attack Tianhua from both sides. What do you think?" Hearing this, Zhang Chunren couldn't help but frown. "Home Master Shui, I don't think that's a good idea. The two of us should stay together to increase our attack power. If we split up, wouldn't our attack power be spread out?" Shui Zhijing shook his head. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, how can that be? If we attack from both sides and form a two-sided siege, it will be difficult for Tianhua to defend. Isn't that a good idea?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. "Home Master Shui, I don't think that's a good idea. We should stay together and attack Tianhua together. That's the best idea." Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing laughed. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you don't understand. My Heavenly Star technique covers a large area. Even with your help, it won't increase the attack power by much. Rather than that, why don't you stay on the other side and we attack from two sides? That way, we'll be able to increase our attack power. Do you understand?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment, but he quickly shook his head. "Halt, Master Shui. Only when we gather our strength will our attack power increase. If we scatter, it will only be detrimental to our strength. Therefore, I still think that Home Master Shui, our best choice is to attack together." Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Shui Zhijing's reply and continued to speak. "Home Master Shui, think about it. If we attack Tianhua from two directions, Tianhua only needs to dodge a little bit to dodge half of the attack. He only needs to block half of the attack. Then our attack power will be reduced by half. Don't you think so?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing shook his head. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you're wrong. Although we're attacking from two directions, your attack power is definitely not as good as mine. Even if Tianhua dodges your attack, my attack power will not be reduced by much. Therefore, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you don't have to worry about this." After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. "Hall Master Shui, although my attack power is not as good as yours, what if Tianhua dodges your attack? Then won't we have to rely on my attack to deal with him?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing was about to speak when LV Hushan suddenly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, if your attack power is not enough, you can add mine. Although my martial arts are not as good as yours, my technique of throwing the Thunderbolt pill is really good. If the two of us join forces, we definitely won't be much weaker than Hall Master Shui's attack. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what do you think?" Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. He turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked doubtfully, "LV Hushan, if you hide at the back when it's time to split the spiritual medicine with Yuan Weiqing, you'll get very little. Won't you regret it?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan sighed. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, when the time comes, although I'll get very little spiritual medicine, in order to catch Tianhua, I can only do this." At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, But he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued to speak. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you and Hall Master Shui attack separately, then your attack power is really not as good as Hall Master Shui's. I think you know this very well. If the strength of the attacks from both sides is not the same, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Therefore, in order to better carry out our plan, I thought that if I join forces with the two of you in terms of attack power, even if it's slightly weaker than Hall Master Shui's, it definitely won't be much weaker. This way, the attack power of both sides will be balanced, and we'll be more confident in catching Yi Tianhua. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't you think so? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned. LV Hushan, do you really not regret it? If you stay at the back, even if we catch Yi Tianhua, you'll get very little spiritual medicine. LV Hushan shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't worry. For everyone, even if I get less spiritual medicine, I'm willing. Saying this, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He was definitely not such a generous person. The reason he said this was because he understood something. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were very strong. In terms of martial arts, LV Hushan was very clear that even if the four of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be Yi Tianhua's match. Under such circumstances, choosing to block Yi Tianhua's attack was undoubtedly a foolish action. It was precisely because of this that LV Hushan did not plan to block in front from the beginning. However, because of the matter of practicing martial arts, LV Hushan decided to take a risk and fight for a future for himself. After the excitement passed, LV Hushan thought carefully. He suddenly understood that even if he blocked in front, he might not be able to practice those advanced martial arts. This was because Yi Tianhua's martial arts were very strong. Even if he and Yuan Weiqing joined forces to block in front, LV Hushan was very clear that he and Yuan Weiqing were 90% sure that they would not be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were so strong. If they could not block his attack, there would only be one outcome, and that was to be killed by Yi Tianhua. Since he was already dead, even if there were more elixirs and high-level martial arts waiting for him to cultivate, it would all be in vain. It would be of no use. It was precisely because of this reason that LV Hushan decided to retreat from the front and hide in the back. Of course, this was not because LV Hushan did not want to practice martial arts, but because he already understood that there was only one outcome if he blocked in front. Even if he hid in the back, once the matter was successful, Yuan Weiqing would definitely be killed by Yi Tianhua. Then, not only would he be able to practice the advanced martial arts, no one would fight with him for the spiritual medicine. This was not the best outcome. LV Hushan had already calculated very clearly. After this battle, Yuan Weiqing would definitely be finished, and he would be the one who would benefit the most. It was precisely because of this that LV Hushan decided to retreat to the back. At least, he would protect himself first. Seeing that LV Hushan was going to hide in the back, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly shocked and hurriedly asked, LV Hushan, if you hide in the back, you will only get 1/10 of the spiritual medicine. Are you really not going to fight with me? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan pretended to sigh. Yuan Weiqing, it's not that I don't want to fight with you. If I also block in the front, Vice Hall Master Zhang and Hall Master Shui's attacks will not be balanced. So, in order to have a greater chance of catching Yi Tianhua, I can only go to the back and join the attack sequence. Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused, sighed, and continued. Yuan Weiqing, I have no other choice, so I made this choice. After this matter is successful, I hope that you will give me 1/10 of the spiritual medicine because of my efforts. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. LV Hushan, this is impossible. If you retreat to the back, I can only give you 1/10 of the spiritual medicine. I hope you will choose carefully. When the time comes, don't regret it. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He knew that as long as the battle started, with Yi Tianhua's martial arts, Yuan Weiqing would definitely not be able to escape. When the time came, all the spiritual medicine would belong to him. Why would he care about the 10 or 20%? Yuan Weiqing, this can't be helped. Etienne's martial arts are very strong. If our attack power is not enough, we will definitely not be able to catch him. So, I can only attack from the back. Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued speaking. As for the 10th of the spiritual medicine, that can't be helped. I only hope that after you master your martial arts, you will not forget that we helped you before. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, since LV Hushan doesn't need to share the spiritual medicine with you, and you're the only one left in front, you have to be careful later. You must block Etienne. Do you understand? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing remembered that other than sharing the spiritual medicine, he also had to block Etienne, who was very strong in martial arts. Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Etienne and was shocked. Once again, he recalled the scene of him sneaking an attack on Etienne. Cold sweat slowly appeared on his forehead. When he sneaked an attack on Etienne just now, Yuan Weiqing had already used all his strength. Even so, Etienne did not use much strength. Yuan Weiqing only saw the flash of a sword in front of him, and he was struck back by the sword. At the same time, he lost an arm. Yuan Weiqing's forehead was drenched in cold sweat as he recalled the dazzling sword light from before. He suddenly realized that it was no longer a matter of how many spiritual herbs he would get, but rather how to block Etienne's attack. If he joined forces with LV Hushan, although they would not be able to block Etienne's attack, Yuan Weiqing knew that he was at least 50% confident that Etienne would not attack him. This meant that he was 50% confident that he would not be attacked by Etienne. However, once LV Hushan retreated, then Etienne's attack would definitely land on him. At that time, what would he use to block Etienne? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly realized that he could not let LV Hushan retreat to the back. Once LV Hushan retreated to the back, he would face Etienne's attack. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing did not answer his question, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown and asked again, Yuan Weiqing, why aren't you saying anything? Quickly answer my question. Can you block Etienne's attack? Zhang Chunren's questioning woke Yuan Weiqing up. He raised his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. After a while, he turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked in a trembling voice, LV Hushan, don't tell me you really want to hide at the back? LV Hushan nodded and sighed. Yuan Weiqing, in order to increase our chances, I can only attack from the back. I hope you can understand my difficulties. Yuan Weiqing shook his head. No, I think you should stay at the front and block Etienne together with me. What do you think? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment and then shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can I do that? I already said that the attack from the back is not balanced. This will make it easy for Etienne to escape, so I should stay at the back. This will increase our chances of catching Etienne. After hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly became annoyed and said loudly, LV Hushan, you can't do this. If you hide in the back, do you think I can block Etienne's attack by myself? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He turned to Zhang Chunren and said quickly, Don't worry, Zhang Chunren. Vice Master Zhang, you all know how high Etienne's martial arts are. Do you really think that you can block Etienne with just martial arts? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, I've said it before. Actually, you don't have to worry. Etienne injured you before, so he definitely feels guilty. Even if he attacks you, he won't use his full strength. So you don't have to worry. Even if Etienne's martial arts is strong, as long as he doesn't hit you too hard, you won't be in danger. Yuan Weiqing, don't be afraid, it'll be fine. We believe in you. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, Vice Master Zhang is right. Etienne is not an unreasonable person. He won't hit you hard, so you can rest assured. Chapter 753. After hearing Zhang Chunren and LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing said in a trembling voice, I understand what you are saying, but what if Yi Tianhua hits me hard? What should I do? Looking at the pale Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He knew very well that once he attacked Yi Tianhua, even if Yi Tianhua's temper was very good, he would definitely explode. At that time, Yuan Weiqing, who was at the front, would definitely be the first to bear the brunt and be crushed by the angry Yi Tianhua. However, LV Hushan would never say these words. If Yuan Weiqing understood this truth, then the person in front of him would be him. Thinking of this, LV Hushan turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, in fact, you really don't have to worry. Even if Yi Tianhua attacks you, when he sees your injured arm, he will definitely feel guilty. At that time, I promise you that he won't hit you hard. If you don't believe me, you can ask Vicehalm Master Zhang. He will definitely explain it to you. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and asked with a trembling voice, Vicehalm Master Zhang, is what LV Hushan said true? Yi Tianhua really won't hit me hard? Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured. There will definitely be no problem. You have been in contact with Yi Tianhua for so long. Don't you understand him? Don't worry, LV Hushan is right. Yi Tianhua won't hurt you heavily because he once injured your arm. With his temper, he won't hurt you again no matter what. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. Vicehalm Master Zhang, I also know this, but I am still worried. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused before he continued. Vicehalm Master Zhang, why don't you let LV Hushan and me stand in front together? This way, the two of us can more or less take care of each other. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Okay, but this matter involves the distribution of the spiritual herbs. You should discuss it among yourselves. As soon as Zhang Chunren finished speaking, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, there's no need. I'll stay at the back. If I go to the front, it will weaken our attack power. If we can't catch Yi Tianhua because of the lack of attack power, then it will be too late for regrets. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, your martial arts aren't high. Even if you stay at the back, you won't be able to increase your attack power by much. It's better if you stay at the front with me. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. If the two of us block Yi Tianhua at the front, we'll be able to buy a lot of time for those behind us. LV Hushan, listen to me. It won't go wrong. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, how can we do that? If we want to catch Yi Tianhua, our attack power must be strong. If our attack power isn't enough, even if Yi Tianhua can't rush over, it won't help. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was a little annoyed. LV Hushan, your martial arts aren't high. Even if you stay at the back, how much attack power can you increase? I think it's better for you to stay at the front. That's the best choice. LV Hushan shook his head again. Yuan Weiqing, that won't do. I've already said that I won't share the spiritual herbs with you. I'll stay at the back. LV Hushan paused for a moment before continuing. Yuan Weiqing, for the sake of you being able to practice the higher level of martial arts in the future, it's better not to talk about it anymore. You should think about how to block Yi Tianhua's attack. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He suddenly remembered that LV Hushan had quarreled with him for the sake of sharing the spiritual herbs with him. Why'd he take the initiative to back out now? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing's frown deepened. He was thinking hard in his heart. Why? Could it be that there was something more important than those spiritual herbs? Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. He asked tentatively, LV Hushan, if you stay at the back, I'm afraid you won't be able to get any of those spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent. Don't you regret it? Hearing Yuan Weiqing mention the spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment, but then he waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, I've already said that if I stay at the back, my contribution won't be much. I can get less of those spiritual herbs. If there's only one portion of spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent, I definitely won't fight with you. You should be relieved now, right? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing was even more puzzled. LV Hushan, it's not just those spiritual herbs that can increase martial arts talent. I'm afraid you won't be able to get the higher level of martial arts. LV Hushan waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, it's better not to say it. I've already said that no matter what, I won't fight with you. As he said this, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He was very clear that although Yuan Weiqing was speaking very well now, when the battle was over, no one could guarantee that Yuan Weiqing would still be there. Etienhua's martial arts were so powerful. With only 20 to 30% of Yuan Weiqing's martial arts left, Etienhua could easily kill him with one hand. Yuan Weiqing frowned. He was even more puzzled in his heart. Could it be that there was really something more important than those spiritual herbs and martial arts? After thinking about it, Yuan Weiqing couldn't think of anything more important than those spiritual herbs and martial arts. If he hadn't thought of this in time, wouldn't he have fallen into LV Hushan's trap? At that time, he would be foolishly standing in front of Etienhua. When he was killed by Etienhua, LV Hushan would be secretly laughing at the side. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was so angry that he was about to fly into a rage. However, he held it in because he knew that there was no point in being angry. This was because this choice wasn't forced by LV Hushan. It was his own choice. Although he made this choice because LV Hushan was scheming against him, Yuan Weiqing was also very clear that if he didn't want to get more spiritual herbs, he naturally wouldn't have fallen into this trap. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at LV Hushan. A trace of a smile appeared on his face as he slowly said, LV Hushan, among us, your martial arts are the weakest. Therefore, the person who should cultivate martial arts the most should be you. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. However, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer him and continued speaking. LV Hushan, so I've decided to give this good opportunity to you. Are you happy? When the time comes, LV Hushan, you will be in front of me. Who knows, maybe in the end, your contribution will be greater than mine. Maybe when it's time to split the spiritual herbs, you will get more than me. How about it? Are you satisfied? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned and hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, how can you do this? These are your contributions. How can I snatch them from you? So forget it. You stay in front. I only want a little spiritual herbs. Yuan Weiqing waved his hand. How can this be? Your martial arts are the weakest. Think about it. When everyone was in trouble in the past, everyone protected you. Don't you want to improve your martial arts so that you can repay us when we are in trouble? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, you are wrong. In the past, my martial arts were the weakest, but now it is different. At this point, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, your arm is broken. You only have 20 to 30% of your martial arts left. Even if your arm is healed, the remaining martial arts will definitely not be much. In this way, the person with the lowest martial arts among us should be you. So I think that you're the one who should practice martial arts the most. Otherwise, you'll be a cripple for the rest of your life. Are you willing to do that? After hearing these words, Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, I understand what you mean. You don't have to worry about me. Don't forget, even if I don't practice martial arts, I still have 1 million gold coins. LV Hushan, if I have 1 million gold coins, can I enjoy life? It's mainly because your martial arts are too low and you don't have 1 million gold coins to enjoy life, so you have to improve your martial arts. Otherwise, in the future, you will owe more favors and you will need more people to protect you. Then, your job as a protector will be meaningless. LV Hushan, listen to me. Work hard to improve your strength. This is the best way. And now is your best chance. You must seize it. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan had already guessed that Yuan Weiqing might have already seen through thoughts. However, even if Yuan Weiqing saw through his thoughts, LV Hushan was not worried at all, since Yuan Weiqing had already agreed to stand in front of him, as long as he did not replace him. In the end, even if Yuan Weiqing was unwilling, he could only stand in front of him. Thinking of this, LV Hushan smiled faintly. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to be polite. Although my martial arts are not high, my position as a protector was also obtained through my martial arts. It was not obtained through everyone's help. Although my martial arts cannot be compared to the one-armed saber king, if I use it to deal with ordinary people, I believe it will not be a problem. Moreover, now that I am old, it is a bit late to want to practice martial arts. So I have also accepted my fate. I have decided to practice martial arts when I have the chance. If I don't have the chance, I have no complaints. Yuan Weiqing, I'm here to bless you. I hope that your martial arts training will go smoothly after this battle is over, and that you'll become a character like the one-armed saber king one day. Don't let us, the people who are helping you, down. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was somewhat annoyed. LV Hushan, how can you be like this? Do you think that I alone can block Tianhua's attack? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, you can rest assured that there will be no problem. Because Tianhua feels guilty towards you, he will definitely not attack you heavily. When the time comes, as long as you block one or two of his attacks with the strength of the three of us, we will definitely be able to take down Tianhua as soon as possible. You'll be safe. Chapter 754. After hearing LV Hushan's words, not only did Yuan Weiqing not feel relieved, he became even more worried. LV Hushan, this won't do. I won't agree. You have to stay at the front. The two of us will block Tianhua together. Otherwise, I won't agree. LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you chose to stand at the front. I didn't force you to. Since you chose it, then do it. Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, although I chose it, I'm going back on my words now. I want the two of us to stand at the front. Do you agree? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, the attacks from the back are insufficient. I have to stay at the back. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, don't say any more. You only need to block one or two attacks from Tianhua. At that time, no one will split the elixirs with you. Isn't that great? What are you dissatisfied with? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sneered. LV Hushan, no. If I stand at the front alone, I'm afraid that the person who needs to practice martial arts will be you, right? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. Then, he hurriedly waved his hand and forced a smile. Yuan Weiqing, look at what you're saying. You're obviously the one who contributed the most. How can the person who practiced martial arts be me? Don't joke around. I'll take it seriously. Yuan Weiqing sighed. LV Hushan, you don't have to say any more. I know what you're thinking. You want to wait for Tianhua to kill me so that you can practice martial arts, right? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he continued. LV Hushan, although your idea is good, let me tell you, it's impossible. Even if I agree to it, do you think that you can get what you want? Seeing that Yuan Weiqing had already seen through his thoughts, LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, I've already said that I will not compete with you for those spiritual herbs. Is it not enough? Yuan Weiqing shook his head and spoke with a sneer. LV Hushan, if I don't tell you, then your idea will never come true. Don't forget, I can't block Tianhua's attacks alone. Maybe Tianhua will kill me in the first round and break through my line of defense. Yuan Weiqing paused and turned to look at LV Hushan. LV Hushan, if Tianhua breaks through my defensive line, who do you think his first target will be? He asked with a cold smile. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. Then, he waved his hand. How can that be? How can Tianhua break through your defense line so easily? If I'm not wrong, he will need at least 2 attacks before he can really deal a heavy blow to you. At that time, he will break through your defense line and rush to the back. But at that time, I believe that under the joint attack of the 3 of us, Tianhua will probably be injured by us. What is there to worry about? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, don't lie to me, and don't lie to yourself. I can assure you that once we attack Tianhua, he won't hold back this time. He will definitely attack with all his strength. At that time, I'm afraid that none of us will be a match for him in one move. LV Hushan, even if you hide in the back, you will definitely not be safe. Because once Tianhua breaks through your defense line, I dare say that his first target will definitely be you. There is absolutely no doubt about this. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused and turned to look at LV Hushan. He sneered and asked, LV Hushan, do you think that you can block Tianhua's attack with your martial arts? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, even if Tianhua breaks through your defense line, how can you be sure that his first target will be me? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, you still don't believe me? Let me tell you, once Tianhua breaks through my defense line, the first person he will attack will definitely be you. Do you believe me? LV Hushan shook his head. I don't believe you. There are 3 people behind us. How can he attack me first? You must be scaring me, right? Yuan Weiqing ignored LV Hushan's words and said directly, LV Hushan, think about it. Even if Tianhua breaks through my defense line, do you think he will attack all Leader Shui? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued speaking. No, I can tell you with certainty that he will definitely not attack all Leader Shui, because once he attacks all Leader Shui, it will immediately cause a fight between the 2 gangs. Tianhua does not want to cause a fight between the 2 gangs, so even if he wants to attack all Leader Shui, I'm afraid he will leave it until the last one. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, you're the one who said it. When the time comes, who knows what will happen? Who knows who Tianhua will really make a move on? Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, I don't care if you believe it or not, but this is the truth. No matter what, Tianhua won't be the first to attack Hall Master Shui. He will only leave Hall Master Shui to the end. Perhaps, in the end, the 2 of them won't fight. Also, let's talk about whether Tianhua will attack Vice Hall Leader Zhang first. I can tell you with certainty that he won't. Vice Hall Leader Zhang's son was in an accident. Think about it. Would Tianhua still attack him? Therefore, Tianhua's first target will definitely be you, someone who has nothing to do with him. LV Hushan, this is all true. I won't lie to you. No matter what the result is, as long as Tianhua breaks through my defense line, then the next unlucky one will be you. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, cold sweat gradually appeared on LV Hushan's forehead. He originally thought that if he hit at the back and there were 3 people behind him, even if Tianhua broke through the front line of defense, he wouldn't necessarily do anything to him. It was because of this that he was completely at ease. However, after hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly realized that Yuan Weiqing was right. What he said might really happen. Hall Leader Shui was the hall leader of the Secret Thunder sect in the South region. Once Tianhua attacked him, it meant that there would be a fight between the 2 gangs. From what happened just now, it could be seen that Tianhua did not want to cause a fight between the 2 gangs. Therefore, Yuan Weiqing was right. Tianhua's first target would definitely not be Hall Leader Shui, and Vice Hall Leader Zhang could not be his first target because Tianhua would definitely feel guilty if Vice Hall Leader Zhang's son was killed. Under such circumstances, even LV Hushan did not believe that Tianhua would attack Vice Hall Leader Zhang. Since Tianhua could not attack Hall Leader Shui and Vice Hall Leader Zhang after breaking through the defense line, then the first target would undoubtedly be him. Thinking of this, more cold sweat appeared on LV Hushan's forehead. After a while, he looked up at Yuan Weiqing and said in a trembling voice, Yuan Weiqing, you're lying to me, right? Seeing LV Hushan's sweaty appearance, Yuan Weiqing sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, if you and I were to stand in front, perhaps Yi Tianhua's first target would be me and not you? As long as Yi Tianhua attacks me, then you'll be safe. What's there to worry about, right? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. Even if I stand in front, Yi Tianhua's first target will probably be me, not you. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words, he continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, don't lie to me. Yi Tianhua once injured you. He must feel guilty about it. When the time comes, why would he attack you first? His first target will definitely be me, an unrelated person. If he does this, at least he won't feel guilty, right? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head and sighed. Then he slowly said, LV Hushan, you're wrong. Yi Tianhua won't feel guilty towards me because I was indeed the one who launched a sneak attack on him and was forced to retaliate. That's why I was injured. The most important thing is that when I attacked him with all my strength, he already felt it. He knows that I attacked him with all my strength, so he must be dissatisfied. In addition, I put forward a lot of conditions to him just now. He will definitely hate me even more. LV Hushan, in this situation, as long as our team attacks, his first target will definitely be me because he hates me for sneaking an attack on him. He hates me for putting forward various conditions to him. In short, he won't let me go. On the contrary, you, an outsider, should be much safer because you didn't sneak an attack on him or put forward various conditions to him. Therefore, his first target will definitely be me, not you. Do you understand? After hearing this, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He pondered carefully in his heart whether Yuan Weiqing's words made sense. LV Hushan had already realized that if Yuan Weiqing was alone in front of him and he stayed behind, it really didn't seem safe. Yuan Weiqing's martial arts were already very weak. As long as Yi Tianhua attacked, he would immediately be defeated and break through the defense line. At that time, as long as Yi Tianhua broke through the defense line set up by Yuan Weiqing, his first target would definitely be him. Thinking of Yi Tianhua's beautiful sword light, LV Hushan was sure that he definitely wouldn't be able to block it. This meant that if he stayed behind, it might be even more dangerous. If he stayed in front, things would really develop, as Yuan Weiqing said. Yi Tianhua's first target would be Yuan Weiqing. Then, he would only be a bystander and definitely wouldn't be hurt. The crux of the problem was, would Yi Tianhua's first target really be himself like Yuan Weiqing said? LV Hushan carefully thought about what Yuan Weiqing said just now and gradually believed what Yuan Weiqing said in his heart. Just now, it was indeed Yuan Weiqing who sneaked an attack on Yi Tianhua. Moreover, it was indeed a sneak attack with all his strength. After the sneak attack, Yuan Weiqing raised many conditions to Yi Tianhua. These conditions were very harsh, and Yi Tianhua was already a little annoyed. Since Yi Tianhua was a little annoyed, would his first target be so annoyed that he wanted to get rid of Yuan Weiqing? If Yi Tianhua really thought so, then wouldn't he be safe? Seeing that LV Hushan lowered his head and didn't say anything, Yuan Weiqing sneered in his heart and said slowly, LV Hushan, don't hesitate. Don't tell me you don't believe my words. If you stay in front, there won't be any danger. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly raised his head and asked doubtfully, Yuan Weiqing, since Yi Tianhua will attack me, then what's the point of having me stay at the front? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, LV Hushan, don't underestimate yourself. How can it be meaningless for me to keep you at the front? At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued. LV Hushan, the main reason I'm keeping you at the front is because I hope that when I attack Yi Tianhua, you can attack him from behind and restrain him. I believe that with you helping me from the side, Yi Tianhua will definitely be caught off guard. When that happens, won't the pressure on me be reduced by a lot? Maybe Tianhua will let me go, and then both of us will be safe. Don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan thought about it in his heart and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, if that's the case, then I can promise you that I'll stay at the front with you and help you at the crucial moment. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued. Yuan Weiqing, I can stay at the front to help you, but you have to promise me that once we successfully capture Tianhua, when it's time to split the spiritual medicine, we'll split it equally. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. After thinking for a moment, he slowly said, LV Hushan, that's impossible. My contribution is greater than yours. Even if you stay at the front, it's still the two of us blocking the front together, so our contribution is the same. However, when I ambushed Tianhua just now, my contribution is greater than yours. So, if you want to split the spiritual medicine equally, I can't agree. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued. Unless you stay at the front yourself. Chapter 755. Yuan Weiqing smiled and said, LV Hushan, if you stay at the front, we can split all the elixirs equally. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan frowned. Yuan Weiqing, how can you do that? If you stay at the front alone, you won't be able to block Tianhua's attack. Are you saying that if I stay at the front alone, I'll be able to block Tianhua's attack? Yuan Weiqing shook his head. LV Hushan, you don't understand. Tianhua hates me. If he sees me blocking the front, he will definitely not hold back and I will naturally be in danger. But you're different. You have no enmity with Tianhua. I don't believe that Tianhua will attack someone who has no enmity with him. LV Hushan, Tianhua is not a ruthless person. So you can rest assured that his first attack will be a probing attack. It will not be strong. As long as you make good use of this, you will definitely be able to safely avoid Tianhua's attack. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, this is absolutely not possible. If you wanted to stay at the front, you must let the two of us stay at the front. If you don't agree, then you should stay at the front alone. I will hide at the back. What do you think? Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, how can this be? Don't tell me you don't want those elixirs? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan nodded. Of course I want them. But you should be very clear that relying on me alone, it is absolutely impossible to block Tianhua's attack. So if you want to stay, we will stay together. Otherwise, you will stay alone. You choose. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and lowered his head to think for a moment. Then he slowly said, LV Hushan, if you agree to stay at the front alone, then I can give you 60% of the elixirs. What do you think? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, no. Even if you give me 60% of the elixirs, I will never agree. Seeing that LV Hushan did not agree to his conditions, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and said, LV Hushan, if you stay in the front, I can give you 70% of the elixirs. Is that okay? Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, I'll give you 70% of the spirit herbs. That's not a small amount. Do you know how many 70% spirit herbs there are? It's a lot, 40% more than me. Are you still not satisfied? Don't forget how big my contribution is. As long as you stand in front and block Tianhua's attack, you can get 70% of the spiritual herbs. LV Hushan, you have to think carefully. You only have one chance. If you miss it, you won't have another chance. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sneered in his heart. He had already understood this point. Naturally, he would not fall for Yuan Weiqing's trick. So what if he could get 70% of the spiritual medicine? Could it be that with his own strength, he could block Tianhua's attack? Impossible. Even LV Hushan was sure that he couldn't block Yi Tianhua's attack. If he was accidentally killed by Yi Tianhua, even if he got 100% of the elixirs, he wouldn't be able to get it. Therefore, even if LV Hushan really wanted those elixirs, he would never agree to stay in front alone and block Yi Tianhua's attack. Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. Even if you give me 70% of the elixirs, I won't agree to stay in front alone and block Yi Tianhua's attack. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continue to speak. Yuan Weiqing, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very strong. The people in front, whether it's you or me, will definitely not be able to block his attack. Therefore, don't think too much. We can only rely on the combined strength of the two of us to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Don't you understand? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing sighed in his heart. He knew that he couldn't fool LV Hushan anymore. However, even though he knew that he couldn't fool LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing still wanted to try. LV Hushan, if you agree to stay in front and block Yi Tianhua's attack alone, then I'll promise you that when it's time to split the elixirs, I'll give you 80% of the elixirs. Are you satisfied now? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's offer, LV Hushan was very tempted. He wanted to agree because if he succeeded, he would get 80% of the elixirs. With 80% of the elixirs, LV Hushan was sure that even if he cultivated with Yuan Weiqing at the same time, his cultivation speed would be much faster. If Yuan Weiqing needed 80 years to master his martial arts, then if he ate 80% of the elixirs, he might be able to master it in 40 years. Thinking of this, LV Hushan was really tempted because everything that was said just now was just everyone's guess. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were indeed very high, but don't forget that the secret thunder sect of the South region also had thunderbolt pills. In addition, Hall Master Shui knew the star technique. Perhaps Yi Tianhua would be injured by the thunderbolt pills before he could rush over. If things really developed like this, wouldn't it mean that 80% of the elixirs were almost the same as picking them up from the ground? As the protector of the secret thunder sect of the South region, LV Hushan naturally knew the power of the thunderbolt pills in his sect. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to catch one, let alone Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang. LV Hushan could guarantee that if Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang were to go all out, there would be dozens of thunderbolt pills thrown out at once. With so many thunderbolt pills forming an inescapable net in the air, even if Yi Tianhua's martial arts were strong, could he escape the inescapable net formed by the thunderbolt pills? Thinking of this, LV Hushan suddenly gained a lot of confidence because what he imagined just now might really happen. First of all, as long as the two sides fought, he would definitely be the first to attack. This was because he came prepared and would definitely catch Yi Tianhua off guard. As long as Hall Master Shui and Vice Hall Master Zhang were the first to throw out dozens of thunderbolt pills, forming an inescapable net. At that time, would Yi Tianhua, who was currently in the inescapable net, have the ability to rush out? When he rushed out, he might already be seriously injured. How much martial arts would a seriously injured Yi Tianhua have left? Maybe, thinking of this, an image suddenly appeared in LV Hushan's mind. Yi Tianhua swayed as he rushed out of the smoke. At that time, would he still have a sword in his hand? Even his sword would have been blown away. How much martial arts would Yi Tianhua have left after he lost his sword? When Yi Tianhua, who was seriously injured and had lost his sword, rushed in front of him, his martial arts might not even be as good as Lin Fan's. At that time, wouldn't Lin Fan be able to capture him? LV Hushan was very clear that if he captured Yi Tianhua, when the time came to split the elixirs, Yuan Weiqing would be lucky if he could get 10% of the elixirs. Thinking that all the elixirs would belong to him, LV Hushan was really happy. Even so, he did not dare to agree. This was because he was very clear that what happened just now was just his imagination. Yi Tianhua's martial arts were strong. Even if he was seriously injured, he was definitely not someone Lin Fan could handle. If Yi Tianhua was seriously injured in the inescapable net and collapsed to the ground, Lin Fan would have gotten a huge advantage. But if Tianhua was only slightly injured when he rushed out, he would definitely be furious. And Lin Fan, who was in front of him, would definitely not be able to escape. Thinking of this, LV Hushan could not help but shiver. He turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and smiled bitterly. Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better to forget about it. Even if you give me all the elixirs, once Tianhua rushes over, I won't be able to stop him. LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. He let out a sigh and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better for the two of us to stay in front. This is safer. Once we are attacked by Tianhua, the two of us can take care of each other and the danger will be reduced. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown and ask tentatively, LV Hushan, are you saying that even if I give you 80% of the elixirs, you won't agree? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I already said that even if you give me 100% of the elixirs, I can't agree to it because I definitely won't be able to stop Tianhua's attack by myself. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and raised his broken arm. He smiled bitterly and said, LV Hushan, do you think that a one-armed person like me could be of any help to you? Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, my arm is seriously injured and I only have 10 to 20% of my martial arts left. Even if I stay in front, do you think I'll be of any use? Who knows? Not only will I not be of any use, but I'll also bring you trouble. Wouldn't that be terrible? LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, that won't happen. Even if you only have 1 or 2 levels of martial arts left, it won't be a problem. Because even if you stay in front, you'll at least be able to hold Tianhua back. So don't worry, you'll definitely be of help to me. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and sighed. LV Hushan, I think it's better to forget about it. I just attacked Tianhua. After he sees me, he'll definitely be angry and increase his attack power. When that happens, won't you be as unlucky as me? LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, don't say any more. Although you sneak attacked Tianhua, but from the conversation just now, all of us can see that he actually doesn't hate you. On the contrary, he even feels a little guilty towards you. Yuan Weiqing, if we use Tianhua's guilt to our advantage, maybe we won't be in any danger at all. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing smiled bitterly and shook his head. LV Hushan, how is that possible? Not to mention, I did attack Tianhua just now. Tianhua also said that he won't forgive me. Later on, I made a lot of excessive demands of him, so I'm sure that Tianhua definitely hates me. As long as he sees me, don't talk about guilt. I'm afraid that he'll take out his sword and kill me to vent his hatred. LV Hushan, believe me, even if I stay in front, I won't be of any help to you. I think it's better to follow what Vice Hall Master Zhang said just now. You stay in front to block Tianhua, and I'll stay behind to attack Tianhua. This is the safest way. Don't you think so? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, what are you talking about? Just now, you were the one who stayed in front alone. You said no, so I agreed to help you. But look, even now, you wanted to stay at the front alone. I don't think I'll help you. You stay at the front by yourself. I'll stay at the back. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. LV Hushan, if you want to stay in front, you said it yourself. I didn't force you. Since you said you want to stay in front, and I didn't stop you, you should stay in front. I'll follow Vice Hall Master Zhang's words and stay behind to attack Tianhua. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head and sneered. Yuan Weiqing, don't forget that the main reason we want to capture Tianhua is because of you. If you don't want to stay at the front, then I think we should just give up on this plan. Yuan Weiqing, as long as we give up this plan, I'm afraid you won't even get a single gold coin. At that time, let's see what you'll do. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. After reacting, he sneered and said, LV Hushan, I admit that catching E Tianhua will be beneficial to me. And don't forget that once we catch E Tianhua, you also want to practice martial arts. If that's the case, how can you say that this matter has nothing to do with you? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan couldn't help but frown. Yuan Weiqing, I'm different from you. Even if I don't practice martial arts, at least I'm not disabled. But you're different. If you don't practice martial arts, your life will be ruined. So, this battle between us is all for you. If you still hide in the back, then I don't think there's any need to continue this battle. Don't you think so? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing knew that he couldn't hide anymore. He could only sigh and slowly say, LV Hushan, to be honest, my martial arts have been greatly reduced. Even if I stay in front, there's no use. Moreover, Yi Tianhua hates me very much. If I stay in front, I might even implicate you. Chapter 756. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. No, you'll only help me if you stay in the front. Why would you get me involved? At the same time, LV Hushan sneered in his heart because he also believed what Yuan Weiqing had just said. Yuan Weiqing had attacked Yi Tianhua. Not only that, but he also refused to admit it. In the end, he even asked Yi Tianhua for various conditions. Through Yi Tianhua's behavior, Yuan Weiqing could see that he was a little annoyed. This was the result that LV Hushan wanted. As long as Yi Tianhua was annoyed with Yuan Weiqing, he would naturally hate him. At that time, his first target would naturally be Yuan Weiqing. As long as Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he would be safe. Although Yi Tianhua had killed Yuan Weiqing and would still attack him, LV Hushan had already thought of a countermeasure for this. In this battle, the first person to attack would definitely be him. LV Hushan believed that with the sudden attack of Vice Hall Leader Zhang and Hall Leader Shui, even if they couldn't catch Yi Tianhua, they could at least injure him. When Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, Hall Leader Shui and Vice Hall Leader Zhang would launch the second round of attack. When a second round of attack came, Yi Tianhua might have been seriously injured. Naturally, he wouldn't be able to attack him. At that time, he would naturally be safe. Even if Yi Tianhua wasn't seriously injured in the second round of attack, LV Hushan wouldn't be worried. This was because when Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he would have already run far away. As for helping Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan didn't even think about it. Who was Yi Tianhua? LV Hushan was certain that if he dared to help when Yi Tianhua was attacking Yuan Weiqing, Yi Tianhua wouldn't even need to attack him head-on. He would only need to use a backhand strike to cripple him like Yuan Weiqing, but more likely he would be killed by Yi Tianhua. Because of this, LV Hushan had already thought it through. Once Yi Tianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, what he had to do was not to attack, but to retreat. After Yuan Weiqing heard LV Hushan's words, he sighed, LV Hushan, if I block in front, Yi Tianhua might be the next one to attack. Therefore, when the time comes, you must help me restrain Yi Tianhua from behind. Do you understand? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. Of course. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry. As long as Yi Tianhua attacks you, I will definitely attack Yi Tianhua from behind so that he won't have time to attack you. At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry. This is just your guess. Maybe the first person Yi Tianhua attacks will be me. When the time comes, I also hope that you will attack Yi Tianhua from behind to share some of my pressure. Yuan Weiqing, please. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing sighed silently. He knew very well how dangerous this battle would be. When he ambushed Yi Tianhua just now, he had already seen Yi Tianhua's martial arts. Yuan Weiqing was sure that if Yi Tianhua attacked him, he wouldn't have any hope of blocking him. Most importantly, he had offended Yi Tianhua just now and made all sorts of requests. He might have already angered Yi Tianhua. When the battle started, Yi Tianhua's first target might be him because of hatred. However, at this point, Yuan Weiqing had no other choice. As long as he wanted to practice martial arts, he had to stand in front. This was his only chance. Of course, Yuan Weiqing could also choose not to practice martial arts, but he was unwilling to do so. If he didn't choose to practice martial arts, his life would really be wasted. Seeing that the two of them had made up their minds, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, have you guys decided to stand in front together? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing nodded at the same time, but didn't say anything. Zhang Chunren ignored their silence and turned to look at Xue Zhijing. He said with a smile, Hall Master Xue, let Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan stay in front while the two of us stay behind and attack Yi Tianhua. What do you think? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan are good. They know that Yi Tianhua's martial arts are strong, but they are not afraid. They are indeed very good. Speaking of this, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for anyone to answer him. For Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan, we all have to work hard. Only by capturing Yi Tianhua can our plan succeed. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, in that case, let's get ready. At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. However, he did not wait for the others to answer his question and continued to speak. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, as long as the battle is over, I will go back and immediately build a secret room for you. I believe that in a few days, you will be able to cultivate successfully. At that time, you can go to the secret room to cultivate. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing remembered that if he wanted to cultivate martial arts, he still needed to go to the secret room. Thinking of the secret room that Zhang Chunren mentioned, Yuan Weiqing's heart couldn't help but tremble. He suddenly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think that after the battle is over, even if we cultivate martial arts, we don't need to go to the secret room to cultivate. As long as we stay at home and cultivate, the effect will be the same. We also don't need to waste money to build a secret room. Isn't this killing two birds with one stone? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, what Hall Master Xue said just now makes sense. If you're allowed to practice martial arts at home, your cultivation speed will definitely drop by a lot. If you cultivate in the secret room, there will be no distractions in your mind. If you cultivate properly, your cultivation speed will increase exponentially. So, I think it's better to follow Hall Master Xue's words and cultivate in the secret room. You can rest assured that the secret room I build will be very sturdy. When your martial arts reach the level of the one-armed saber king, when will you be able to break the secret room with your martial arts? I think, under the drive of this kind of motivation, you and LV Hushan's cultivation speed will definitely be very fast. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang, you are right. Only by cultivating martial arts in the secret room can we achieve the upper level of martial arts. Only then can we live up to our expectations. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, you also have to work hard. Yuan Weiqing turned his head and looked at LV Hushan. He frowned and said, LV Hushan, are you willing to cultivate martial arts in the secret room? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan smiled bitterly and shook his head. I don't want to. If possible, even if it's a little slower, I'd rather cultivate at home. I don't want to cultivate in that secret room. It's too painful. After hearing LV Hushan's answer, Yuan Weiqing quickly turned his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. He quickly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you also heard that LV Hushan also doesn't want to cultivate in the secret room. So, I think we should forget about the matter of building the secret room. Let's stay at home and cultivate. What do you think? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to speak and said first, Yuan Weiqing, do you know how rare this opportunity to cultivate martial arts is? But you don't want to cultivate seriously. This is really disappointing. Yuan Weiqing, listen to me. Don't think about those things. As long as you cultivate in the secret room, it's better than anything else. Do you understand? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. Home Master Shui, if you want me to cultivate in the secret room, then I'd rather not cultivate. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing was stunned for a moment, but his heart was suddenly overjoyed. Wasn't this the reason he had been talking for so long? As long as Yuan Weiqing didn't want to cultivate martial arts, then naturally there was no need to fight with Yi Tianhua. Yi Tianhua didn't want the two gangs to fight, and Shui Zhijing didn't want to either. So, as long as the problem could be solved, he didn't want to cause more trouble. Moreover, for today's matter, Yi Tianhua had already agreed to compensate 5 million gold coins. In Shui Zhijing's opinion, this should be enough. However, if Yuan Weiqing wanted to cultivate martial arts, then this amount of gold coins would naturally not be enough. So he could only capture Yi Tianhua and do, as Zhang Chunren said, and obtain more gold coins. But this was not the result Shui Zhijing wanted. So, he thought of this method to make things difficult for Yuan Weiqing and make him retreat. As long as Yuan Weiqing decided not to cultivate martial arts, this matter would be perfectly resolved. No matter what happened in the future, at least it wouldn't cause a fight between the two gangs. Thinking of this, Shui Zhijing raised his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, could it be that you really don't want to cultivate martial arts? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing let out a sigh. Head Shui, I really can enjoy the backroom that you've built. If I had to live in that 1 wide backroom for dozens of years, I would rather not cultivate than suffer that torture. Shui Zhijing's words made Yuan Weiqing sigh. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan also smiled bitterly and said, Home Master Shui, Yuan Weiqing is right. That kind of secret room can't be lived in. In order to cultivate martial arts, who would be able to endure suffering for a few decades. So if you insist, then we can only withdraw. After hearing the two's words, Shui Zhijing waved his hand and said with a cold smile, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, you want to be like the one-armed Saber King, but you don't want to suffer the pain that the one-armed Saber King went through. Do you think it's so easy to cultivate high-level martial arts? At this point, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing to reply, and continued. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, the two of you remember, if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to suffer enough to succeed. If you want to cultivate, then I can support you with all my strength. But if you don't want to cultivate, then don't waste our resources. You also know that if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to pay a high price. Since you don't want to cultivate, then I think we should just drop this matter. What do you think? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Then he whispered, Home Master Shui, we just want to stay at home and cultivate. It's not that we don't want to cultivate. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing shook his head and said with a sigh, Yuan Weiqing, if you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, then you have to listen to my instructions. Yuan Weiqing, I'm not trying to harm you. I know the one-armed Saber King, so I naturally know how he cultivated his martial arts. Therefore, I believe that if you want to stay at home and cultivate, it's absolutely impossible for you to cultivate to the upper level of martial arts. So if you want to cultivate martial arts, then you have to follow the one-armed Saber King's method to succeed. Do you understand? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. Home Master Shui, I know you're doing this for our own good, but in that kind of secret room, no matter what, we can't stay there. Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Shui Zhijing to answer his words, and continued speaking. Home Master Shui, why don't you let us stay at home and cultivate? Even if our martial arts can't reach the one-armed Saber King's level, we won't regret it. What do you think? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, LV Hushan is right. Anyway, we don't want to reach the one-armed Saber King's level. Just let us stay at home and cultivate. As for what level we can cultivate to, we'll accept it. Home Master Shui, just give us this chance. After hearing the two's words, Shui Zhijing smiled and nodded. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, since you don't have the confidence to reach the one-armed Saber King's level of martial arts, and want to stay at home and cultivate instead of cultivating in the secret room, that's fine, I can agree. Speaking up to here, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan to answer his words, and continued speaking. However, since you don't care about the level of your martial arts, I think we have to change our plan. Spending a lot of money to buy elixirs, spending a lot of effort to obtain secret martial arts manuals, and medicinal herbs that can change one's martial arts talent. None of these are needed. Anyway, you don't care about the level of your martial arts. What's the use of us spending so much money? So, I've decided that today's matter will end here. After you go back to your own home and cultivate your martial arts. As for what level you can cultivate to, that's your own business. I won't interfere. LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, what do you think of this idea? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment and asked with some doubt, Home Master Shui, if we go home and cultivate, does that mean that the elixirs, secret martial arts manuals, and medicinal herbs that can change one's martial arts talent will all be gone? Chapter 757. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing smiled and nodded. Of course, since you've decided to go home and practice martial arts, and you don't care about the results of your practice, then there's no need for us to continue fighting. Go back and practice well, right? Hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. He raised his hand and looked at his broken arm. Oh, Master Shui, does this mean my arm is like this? Shui Zhijing sighed. Yuan Weiqing, Tianhua has already agreed to compensate us with some gold coins. When the time comes, we can give you some as compensation. What do you think? Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. Oh, Master Shui, I can't practice martial arts, so I can only get some gold coins, right? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing spread out his hands and smiled bitterly. Yuan Weiqing, you've already said that you don't have any special requirements for the results of your practice. Since you want to practice at home, then this is the only way I can do it. Yuan Weiqing sighed. Oh, Master Shui, this means that as long as we want to practice martial arts, we have to practice in the secret room. Otherwise, you won't give us any help? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing couldn't help but frown. He said coldly, Yuan Weiqing, how else do you want to help? Tianhua injured you, and he has already agreed to compensate you, and the amount is not small. Are you still not satisfied? Hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and raised his arm. He said loudly, Oh, Master Shui, does this mean that my arm is only worth 1 million gold coins? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing frowned. Yuan Weiqing, what do you think? How much gold coins should it be worth? In fact, when Yuan Weiqing said those words, he was already regretting it. He attacked Tianhua, and in the end, Tianhua compensated him with 1 million gold coins. Normally speaking, this was not a small amount. It could even be considered a lot. Hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned but didn't say anything. He had nothing to say. Shui Zhijing continued, Yuan Weiqing, just now we saw that your broken arm was pitiful, so we wanted to help you stand up again. However, if you didn't need our help and wanted to cultivate by yourself at home, Yuan Weiqing, how can I not agree to this condition of yours? Don't you think so? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, being at home doesn't affect my cultivation. Who knows, my cultivation speed might even be faster. Home Master Shui, please believe me. Just tell me this once. If you let me cultivate at home, I will definitely not be lazy and cultivate seriously. I promise you that I will do as I say. Home Master Shui, please rest assured that I will definitely do it. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing shook his head slightly. Yuan Weiqing, that's impossible. Haven't I told you about the one-armed Saber King? Speaking up to here, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words and continued speaking. Yuan Weiqing, you should know that the one-armed Saber King's martial arts talent is quite high. However, in order to cultivate the upper-level martial arts, he could only cultivate in a secret room. Only then could he succeed. I remember that the one-armed Saber King once told me that in order to cultivate the upper-level martial arts and become a top expert, he must suffer torture that ordinary people can't endure. Only then can he become an expert of a generation. Yuan Weiqing, I had great hopes for you. I hoped that you would become the second one-armed Saber King in the South region. So he agreed to help you and used his own money to build a secret room for you. However, you disappointed me too much. You want to cultivate the upper-level martial arts, but you don't want to cultivate in a secret room. Then let me ask you, how do you want me to believe you? Yuan Weiqing, even a person like the one-armed Saber King has to cultivate in a secret room. Do you think that your martial arts talent is better than the one-armed Saber King's? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing hastily said, "Home Master Shui, although my martial arts talent is not good, once I eat the medicine that you find that can increase my martial arts talent, my talent will naturally be higher than the one-armed Saber King's. Home Master Shui, as long as my martial arts talent is higher than the one-armed Saber King's, then my cultivation speed will definitely be much faster than the one-armed Saber King's. Don't you think so? Even if I cultivate at home, you definitely won't affect my cultivation speed. Home Master Shui, you can rest assured that I will absolutely not let you down." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing sneered in his heart. He could see that this guy in front of him wanted to cultivate martial arts, but didn't want to put in effort. It was really a good idea, but unfortunately, no one would help him. A person who didn't want to put in effort, who would help him? Shui Zhijing coughed lightly, then slowly said, "Yuan Weiqing, in fact, in my opinion, after having those gold coins, it will be enough for you to live a comfortable life. Why would you want to cultivate those martial arts? Don't you think so?" Speaking up to here, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his words and continued to speak. "Yuan Weiqing, cultivating martial arts is not a comfortable thing. You need to practice diligently and bitterly. Like I said just now, being locked in a secret room to cultivate, I think you won't be able to adapt to that kind of life. Why don't you just take those gold coins and enjoy life?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was suddenly stunned. For a moment, he was actually speechless. To the side, LV Hushan suddenly opened his mouth and said, "Yuan Weiqing, Home Master Shui is right. If you want to cultivate high-level martial arts, you must endure the most bitter of hardships. If you can't endure these hardships, even if you cultivate, I'm afraid you won't be able to achieve the desired results. Yuan Weiqing, I think it's better to just let it go. If you don't cultivate, we won't have to fight with Tianhua anymore. Isn't that good?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly felt a little annoyed and turned to look at LV Hushan. "LV Hushan, don't talk nonsense. How do you know that I'm not willing to endure hardships? Don't tell me that if I cultivate at home, it means that I don't want to endure hardships?" Speaking up to here, Yuan Weiqing's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his words and continued speaking. "LV Hushan, have you ever thought that even if I cultivate at home, as long as I persevere and keep working hard, I'm afraid that the effects will be better than cultivating in the secret room? Do you believe it?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. "Yuan Weiqing, I don't believe it. If cultivating at home is better than cultivating in the secret room, then let me ask you, why did the one-armed Saber King cultivate in the secret room for decades? Could it be that he was willing to endure the hardships?" Yuan Weiqing sneered. "LV Hushan, let me ask you, what's the difference between cultivating in the secret room for 12 hours a day and cultivating at home for 12 hours a day?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was stunned for a moment. He couldn't help but frown and shake his head. There shouldn't be any difference, right? Speaking up to here, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued speaking. "But if you stay at home, how can you cultivate for 12 hours a day? I don't believe it. If you can cultivate for 18 hours a day, you're already amazing. You see, there are 12 hours a day. Even if you eat 2 meals a day, these 2 meals will take up an hour. In this way, there are only 11 hours left. After cultivating every day, you need to rest for a while. How long do you need to rest? You need to rest for 6 hours every night. In this way, there are only 16 hours left every day. Yuan Weiqing, tell me, how do you want to cultivate for 18 hours? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. LV Hushan, why not? I only need to rest for 4 hours every night. Of course, I can cultivate for 18 hours. What's wrong with that? 4 hours? LV Hushan stretched out 2 fingers and looked at Yuan Weiqing in surprise. Yuan Weiqing, are you saying that you only sleep for 4 hours a day? Yuan Weiqing sneered. LV Hushan, is that not okay? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, LV Hushan sighed. Yes, why not? Yuan Weiqing, you only sleep for 4 hours a day. Do you think that's enough? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, this is not a day or two, but decades of persistence. Do you think you can only sleep for 4 hours a day? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing nodded his head. LV Hushan, why not? In order to cultivate martial arts earlier, even if we have to suffer a little, what's the big deal? Therefore, I will definitely be able to do this. Every day, I will only sleep for 4 hours and cultivate for 18 hours. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, I don't believe it. Are you saying that you only sleep for 4 hours a day, and the rest of the time is to eat and cultivate martial arts? Then let me ask you, when your wife and children talk to you, don't you answer? Hearing this sentence, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. LV Hushan, in order to cultivate martial arts, how can I have so much time to talk to them? Therefore, I feel that just like what I said just now, every day, 2 hours of eating time, 4 hours of sleeping time, and the remaining 18 hours are all used to cultivate martial arts. I believe that using such a long time to cultivate martial arts, the effect should be about the same as cultivating in the secret room. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing shook his head and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, why don't you understand? This is not the same. When you're cultivating at home, just like what LV Hushan said, when your wife and children talk to you, you don't have to talk to them. But once they need your help, won't you help them? At this point, Xue Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he sighed and continued. Yuan Weiqing, I believe that you are not the only one who can do this. Everyone can't do it. There are many things that can't be done in a short period of time. It might take 1 or 2 days, or even longer. It might even take 8 to 10 days. If you do these things for 8 to 10 days, how can you have time to cultivate martial arts? Yuan Weiqing, if this kind of thing happens, even if you only sleep for 2 hours a day, I'm afraid you won't be able to make up for it. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand. Oh, Master Xue, how can this kind of thing happen? It's impossible. Even if there is something that needs my help, if it is a small matter that won't take up too much time, I will help them do it. But if it takes a long time, I will definitely not do it myself. I will definitely find someone else to help. I will not delay my cultivation. Hall Master Xue, please believe me. I am a very persevering person. I will not let some trivial matters affect my cultivation. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, there are many things that others can't help you with. If you have to do it yourself, then what will you do? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing waved his hand and solemnly said, LV Hushan, no matter what it is, if it takes a long time, I will not help. I promise you that I will definitely keep my word. If I say that I will not help, then I will definitely not help. LV Hushan nodded. Yuan Weiqing, even if your son is sick, will you not take him to see a doctor? Hearing this question, Yuan Weiqing suddenly froze. For a moment, he was actually speechless. Seeing this, LV Hushan sneered. Yuan Weiqing, what do you think? You can't just not help, right? That's why I also feel that it's better to just forget about it. Take your gold coins and go home to enjoy your life. Isn't that better than anything else? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth but didn't speak. This was because he also knew that LV Hushan was actually right. If he wanted to cultivate to the upper level of martial arts and reach the level of one-armed saber king, it was simply too difficult. Yuan Weiqing was sure that according to his current state, even if he cultivated for 100 years, he was afraid that he would not be able to reach that level. And the only chance was those elixirs that could change one's martial arts talent. As long as he had those elixirs that could change one's martial arts talent, Yuan Weiqing would be able to cultivate to the upper level of martial arts. Of course, he was also very clear that only with superb martial arts talent, it was absolutely impossible to cultivate to the upper level of martial arts. The most important thing was that he had to train hard. Only in this way could he cultivate to the level of one-armed saber king. Yuan Weiqing didn't want to suffer this pain. Moreover, he had never thought that he would be able to cultivate to the level of one-armed saber king. What he wanted now was to do his best. As for how high level of martial arts he could cultivate to, he would not force it. Of course, the most important thing was those elixirs that could change one's martial arts talent. He must obtain them. Also, those precious elixirs had to be eaten. Yuan Weiqing wanted to obtain these precious things because he knew that as long as he had these things, his martial arts would definitely be stronger. Chapter 758. Yuan Weiqing gritted his teeth. Don't worry. Even if what you said really happens, I will not waste too much time. I will solve it as soon as possible and then return to the state of cultivation. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan sighed. Yuan Weiqing, this matter is easy to say, but it is not easy to do. You should know that every family has a lot of things to do, and each of them is very important. At that time, Yuan Weiqing, even if you don't have much time to deal with each matter, in the end, I'm afraid that you won't even have time to cultivate. Yuan Weiqing, if this kind of thing happens, wouldn't it be a waste of everyone's support for you? So, I think it's better to forget about this matter. Don't think about it anymore. Go back and live a stable life. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned. He knew that the outcome of this battle would be decided with a single thought. Moreover, he also knew that among the 4 people present, Hall Master Shui and LV Hushan didn't want to fight because the opponent was too powerful. They might die because of this matter, so they didn't want to fight anymore. Yuan Weiqing was very clear that the people who wanted to continue fighting were himself and Vice Hall Master Zhang. If he continued fighting and captured Etianhua, Vice Hall Master Zhang would get what he wanted, and he would also get what he wanted. The problem was, should he continue fighting? If he didn't continue fighting, he wouldn't get anything. Elixirs that could increase strength, high-level martial arts, and herbs that could change talent, all of it would be in vain. However, if he wanted to continue fighting, it would not be easy for him to obtain those things. Hall Master Shui had already said that as long as the battle was over, he would go to the secret room to cultivate martial arts. The problem was, Yuan Weiqing really didn't want to go to the secret room to cultivate martial arts. What should he do? Yuan Weiqing scratched his head. He didn't know what to do. On one hand, there were great benefits. On the other hand, there was great suffering. Yuan Weiqing wanted to get benefits, but he didn't want to suffer that kind of suffering, so he was in a dilemma. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing didn't speak, Shui Zhijing nodded and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, why do you embarrass yourself? Since you don't want to cultivate in the back room, why don't you take those gold coins and enjoy yourself? What's wrong with that? Shui Zhijing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing's reply and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, I know you don't want to give up this opportunity, but don't forget, even if you have this opportunity, you'll have to sacrifice a lot in order to have the hope of cultivating peerless martial arts. Of course, there are also many possibilities. Even if you cultivated your whole life, you might not be able to reach the level of one-armed saber king. The reason why there was only one-armed saber king in all these years was because martial arts were too difficult to practice. Yuan Weiqing, You're also a martial artist. You should know very well that when martial arts reach a certain level, it is what we call a bottleneck. If you want to take another step forward, it is more difficult than ascending to the heavens. There are many people who are stuck at this step. Even after spending their whole lives, they still can't break through this bottleneck that is more difficult than ascending to the heavens. Yuan Weiqing, until now, only one-armed saber king in the south region has practiced these martial arts to the Dashang level. There are many people who want to be like him and become a peerless expert, but unfortunately, no one has succeeded in so many years. Don't tell me you think that none of these people who practice martial arts are hard-working and talented in martial arts. Shui Zhijing turned his head and patted Yuan Weiqing's shoulder. He sighed, Yuan Weiqing, there are many people who are very talented in martial arts. They're also very hardworking, but they have not succeeded. Do you know why? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. I don't know. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Shui Zhijing was about to speak when Zhang Chunren suddenly said, I know why they have not succeeded in cultivating martial arts. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing was stunned for a moment. He then turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren and asked with a smile, Vice-Hall Master Zhang, why is that? Why can't they cultivate martial arts like one-armed saber king? Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. Because, although their martial arts talent is very high, they either lack good martial arts or don't have enough elixirs. Therefore, their martial arts are stuck at a bottleneck and can't improve for the rest of their lives. Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, these people's talents are indeed very high. One of my friends is such a person. His martial arts talent is extremely high, but it's a pity that he doesn't have enough spiritual herbs to support his cultivation. Speaking up to here, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued. Yuan Weiqing, this friend of mine was my best friend when I was young. He joined the Sky Sword sect when he was young. His master also recognized his martial arts talent, so he taught him without holding back. He also practiced bitterly with all his might, but unfortunately, although his master recognized him, his master did not have many spiritual medicine, so he naturally could not help him. And this friend of mine, although his martial arts talent is very high, his family background is not very good. If his family background was good, he would be able to buy enough spiritual medicine. With his martial arts talent, he would definitely be able to reach an extremely high level. But unfortunately, he did not have enough gold coins to buy spiritual medicine, so his high martial arts talent was wasted. Up until now, although his martial arts is higher than mine, it is not much higher. Yuan Weiqing, because he did not have enough gold coins to buy enough spiritual medicine, he did not succeed in cultivating martial arts. And there are also people who have a lot of gold coins and the spirit to cultivate diligently, but they do not have superior martial arts. This is also futile. Therefore, the three things we just talked about are indispensable. Even if one is missing, there is no way to cultivate peerless martial arts. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Then he suddenly opened his mouth and said, Vice-Hall Master Zhang, they did not succeed in cultivating peerless martial arts because they lack something, but if it was me, I should have all three of these things. Speaking up to here, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Zhang Chunren to reply and continued speaking. Vice-Hall Master Zhang, does this mean that I will definitely be able to cultivate peerless martial arts? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Although I do not dare to guarantee that you will succeed, I can guarantee that your chances of success will be higher than theirs. Of course, all these problems can only be solved by capturing Etianhua. Yuan Weiqing, I hope that you will work hard. Of course, I also have high hopes for you, so I will help you. You must not disappoint me. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly opened his mouth and said, Vice-Hall Master Zhang, if I have these three things, can I not cultivate in the secret room? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and nodded. Of course, with these three things, it is equivalent to half the success. The rest, as long as you work hard, you will naturally succeed. After hearing Zhang Chunren's answer, Yuan Weiqing was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Shui Zhijing and said with a smile, "Home Master Shui, Vice Hall Master Zhang is right. I can stay at home and cultivate. I don't need to cultivate in the secret room." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing frowned and turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren. He asked with a smile, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you mean that Yuan Weiqing only needs to stay at home and cultivate, right?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren hurriedly nodded. "Hall Master Shui, if we find these three things, I believe that Yuan Weiqing should be able to cultivate very quickly. There is really no need to go to the secret room." Speaking up to this point, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Shui Zhijing to answer his question and continued. "Moreover, cultivating in that kind of secret room, if a person's mind is strong enough, they will be able to persevere. If a person's mind is not strong enough, if they stay in that secret room for too long, they might go crazy. Hall Master Shui, it is because of this reason that I am considering letting them stay at home and cultivate, so that they will not be affected mentally." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing nodded. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you say that there is no problem, then let's do it this way." Speaking up to this point, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then he did not wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question and continued. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you have already decided, then let me ask you, who will stay at the front and who will stay at the back? Have you decided?" Hearing Shui Zhijing's question, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded and said with a smile, "Hall Master Shui, it has been decided. LV Hushan and I will stay at the front. We will definitely not delay things." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing nodded and said with a smile, "Yuan Weiqing, since you and LV Hushan have decided to stay at the front, I am very happy. Now, even though you know that Tianhua is strong, you still dare to stay at the front. I did not misjudge you. You did not disappoint me." Speaking of this, Shui Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question. "Both of you are the protectors of the secret thunder sect in the south region. You are also considered the talents of our secret thunder sect. This time, you two will be at the front. You must be careful, because everything can only be discussed if you can stay. If you're killed by Tianhua, then it is useless to say anything. Yuan Weiqing, you have fought with Tianhua before, so you know how his martial arts are. LV Hushan, you have not fought with Tianhua before, so you need to be more careful. Tianhua is not an ordinary person. Even if it's me, if he goes all out, I'm afraid I won't be able to take a hit from him. So you must be careful. You must not die because of Dazhai, understand?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. "Thank you for your concern, Hall Master Shui. We will be careful." Hearing their answers, Shui Zhijing nodded and took a step forward. He came to the front of the two and lowered his voice. "Just now I fought with Tianhua. I can already see that he should be practicing the plum blossom sword technique. Tianhua has already practiced this sword technique to a very high level. Legend has it that when the plum blossom sword technique is practiced to the extreme, it can transform into 9 plum blossoms in a circle. When I fought with him just now, Tianhua had already transformed into 5 plum blossoms, so you must be careful. Remember, the power of the plum blossom sword technique is that the 5 plum blossoms that Tianhua transformed should be the end of the 2nd plum blossom and the beginning of the 4th plum blossom. This is the complete move. As for the other parts, although they are also very powerful, they are still lacking compared to these 2 parts. The 2 of you must remember that the end of the 2nd plum blossom and the beginning of the 4th plum blossom are the most important parts. Even if you can't block the first few parts, you must block these 2 parts. Do you understand?" After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, LV Hushan frowned and asked doubtfully, "Hall Master Shui, wouldn't it be better if we block all of them? Why do we have to block the end of the 2nd plum blossom and the beginning of the 4th plum blossom?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Shui Zhijing smiled bitterly and shook his head. "LV Hushan, do you think it's that simple? At this point, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for LV Hushan to answer his question and continued speaking. The power of the plum blossom sword technique lies in the fact that with just one move, there can be a myriad of changes. If the martial art is perfected, there could be 9 plum blossoms. The petals of the 9 plum blossoms are divided into 9 pieces, which means there are 9 different changes. In other words, with just one move, there can be 81 changes in an instant. LV Hushan. These 81 changes are both fake and real. It's so dazzling that it's almost impossible to tell which one is real and which one is fake. LV Hushan. The most important thing is that sometimes a fake move can become a real move. This is the power of the plum blossom sword technique. At this point, Xue Zhijing paused and sighed before continuing. When the plum blossom sword technique is perfected, there could be 9 plum blossoms in one move. Etianhua has already mastered it and can create 5 plum blossoms in one move. LV Hushan, don't underestimate these 5 plum blossoms. Each of the 5 plum blossoms can create 9 different changes. These 5 plum blossoms can evolve into 45 different changes. LV Hushan, I believe that none of us can block these 45 changes. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, LV Hushan was shocked. When he thought of Etianhua's magnificent sword light, he was even more shocked and asked in a trembling voice, Hall Leader Xue, are you saying that each of Etianhua's moves can evolve into 45 different changes? Hearing LV Hushan's question, Xue Zhijing nodded. That's right. Each of Etianhua's moves can evolve into 45 different changes. Chapter 759. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, LV Hushan said in shock, Hall Master Xue, doesn't this mean that none of us can block Etianhua's attack? Xue Zhijing nodded and said with a bitter smile, LV Hushan, you saw the battle between me and Etianhua just now. Etianhua only used one move to injure me. His martial arts must not be underestimated. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, LV Hushan's hope of getting lucky suddenly faded. He was also a little scared. He originally thought that if Etianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he would be safe. But now, it seemed that even if Etianhua attacked Yuan Weiqing, he might not be safe. Etianhua's martial arts were so strong that he could create 45 transformations with just one move. With this kind of martial arts, there was no need to talk about fighting him directly. Even if they were hit by his attack, they might not be able to survive. Thinking of this, LV Hushan suddenly regretted his decision. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing, but found that Yuan Weiqing's expression was similar to his. They were both very ugly. Seeing this scene, LV Hushan looked at Yuan Weiqing and said with a forced smile, Yuan Weiqing, I really didn't expect Etianhua's martial arts to be so strong. He can create 45 transformations with just one move. It seems that he didn't use his full strength just now. If he used his full strength, I'm afraid you wouldn't have just lost an arm. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing's expression became even uglier. He wanted to answer, but he didn't know what to say. He could only stand there and think. The more Yuan Weiqing thought about it, the more he felt a chill in his heart. Originally, he wanted to rely on luck to pass this stage, but if Etianhua's martial arts were really that high, then there was no chance of luck at all. At that time, even if Hall Master Xue and Vice Hall Master Zhang could succeed, the two of them in front would probably be killed by Etianhua's fierce attacks. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was about to speak when he heard Xue Zhijing say, Since everyone has decided, then everyone should be careful. We will start preparing now. I will count to 3 and we will immediately attack. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, you two stand in front. You must block them. The success or failure of this mission will depend on you two. Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for the others to answer him and started counting on his own. 1, 2. Hearing that Xue Zhijing immediately counted to 3, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and immediately exclaimed. At the same time, LV Hushan shouted almost at the same time. Hall Master Xue, Wait a moment. Don't attack yet. Shui Zhijing stopped talking and turned to look at the two of them. He then asked with a smile, LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, are you not ready? Hearing Shui Zhijing's question, Yuan Weiqing forced a smile and nodded. Home Master Shui, after hearing you say that Yi Tianhua is so powerful, I suddenly realized that if LV Hushan and I were to stand in front of him, we wouldn't be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing frowned. Yuan Weiqing, didn't you just say that there would be no problem? Why are you worried now? As soon as Shui Zhijing finished speaking, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, Yuan Weiqing is right. With just the two of us, we won't be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. If we delay things, wouldn't it be terrible? After hearing their words, Shui Zhijing nodded. So that's what you're thinking. You're afraid of delaying our mission. Since that's the case, what do you want? Hearing Shui Zhijing's question, Yuan Weiqing was stunned for a moment. Then, he said in a low voice, Home Master Shui, your martial arts are strong. Can you block in front with the two of us? After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing was stunned. He then smiled and shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, it's not a problem for me to block in front. However, if I block in front, who will attack Yi Tianhua? Hearing that Shui Zhijing had no intention of rejecting, Yuan Weiqing was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, don't we still have Vice Home Master Zhang behind us? He will attack Yi Tianhua from behind. Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Shui Zhijing's reply and continued. Home Master Shui, as long as the three of us block in front, Yi Tianhua will definitely not be able to break through our defense line. When the time comes, Vice Home Master Zhang will definitely be able to injure him. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing smiled and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, although your idea is good, have you ever thought that our attack power from behind is too weak? It's very likely that Yi Tianhua will escape. Wouldn't we be in trouble then? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing was stunned. For a moment, he was speechless. LV Hushan suddenly said, Home Master Shui, if you feel that the attack power at the back is weak, it's okay. I can retreat to the back. When the time comes, Vice Home Master Zhang and I will attack Yi Tianhua. I think the attack power should be enough. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Shui Zhijing frowned and said slowly, LV Hushan, I feel that even if you and Vice Home Master Zhang attack together, the attack power is still not enough. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, if you feel that the attack power at the back is still not enough, then let me retreat to the back. I believe that the attack power of the three of us should be enough. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Shui Zhijing's frown deepened. He turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a bitter smile, Yuan Weiqing, if we go according to your plan, doesn't that mean that I will block in front alone and the three of you will retreat to the back? Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were both stunned. Yuan Weiqing reacted quickly and said hurriedly, Hall Master Shui, your martial arts are strong. You alone are stronger than the two of us. If you block in front, you will definitely be able to block Yi Tianhua's attack. And if the three of us work together, we should be able to injure Yi Tianhua. LV Hushan also hurriedly said, Home Master Shui, I'm afraid this is the best way. Why don't you agree? After hearing the two's words, Shui Zhijing sighed. Yi Tianhua's martial arts are strong. Even I would not be able to block one of his attacks. It is because of this that I chose to stay behind, because I know the Heavenly Star technique. If we were talking about throwing the Thunderclap ball, I'm afraid that the three of you will not be able to compare to me. Therefore, I made this plan in hopes that we will have a greater chance of capturing Yi Tianhua, because all of our plans require capturing Yi Tianhua in order to carry out them. Shui Zhijing turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing, if you want to cultivate to a higher level, then you must capture Yi Tianhua, because only by capturing Yi Tianhua will he help us borrow a large amount of gold coins. Also, he will send all of his men to look for elixirs that can increase one's martial arts talent. If we cannot capture Yi Tianhua, then all of our plans will not be able to be carried out. Therefore, I decided to let you guys stay in the front while I use the Heavenly Star technique to deal with Tianhua. But if you guys make such a move, I'm afraid that our chances will drop by a lot. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, Master Xue, don't worry. As long as you can block Tianhua's attack, the three of us will definitely be able to injure Tianhua. Xue Zhijing sighed. To be honest, I can only block one of Tianhua's attacks. The problem is, can you guys injure Tianhua in one move? After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan lowered their heads at the same time. This was because both of them knew that Tianhua's martial arts were very strong. It was impossible for them to injure Tianhua in one move. Zhang Chunren muttered to himself for a moment before slowly saying, Master Xue, I think that as long as everyone follows my plan, we should be able to capture Tianhua. At this point, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for Xue Zhijing to reply and continued speaking. Master Xue, because we are launching a sneak attack, we will launch another attack. From the start, it will not be the three of us fighting, but the four of us. When we launch the sneak attack, the four of us will attack at the same time. Master Xue, you will also use the Heavenly Star technique to deal with Tianhua. I think that under our combined sneak attack, even if we cannot injure Tianhua, we will at least injure him lightly. And at this time, Tianhua will definitely be furious and will charge towards us. At this time, Master Xue, you can go forward and block Tianhua's attack. And the three of us will retreat to the back and continue attacking Tianhua. Master Xue, you can block Tianhua's attack once. During this time, we can also attack him once. I believe that in this attack, Tianhua will definitely be injured again. Who knows? We might even be able to capture Tianhua during this attack. Don't you think so, Master Xue? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing frowned. Zhang Chunren, although what you said is very good, with the strength of the three of you, do you really think that you can capture Tianhua during the second attack? Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. Master Xue, if there are no accidents, even if we cannot capture Tianhua during the second attack, we will definitely be able to capture him during the third attack. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing frowned. He glanced at the three people in front of him and slowly said, Master Zhang, I don't believe that the three of you can capture Tianhua during the second attack. Just as Xue Zhijing finished speaking, LV Hushan suddenly said, Master Xue, it shouldn't be a problem. Master Zhang also said that even if we can't capture Tianhua during the second attack, I believe that we can capture him during the third attack. Hearing LV Hushan's words, Xue Zhijing suddenly laughed coldly. LV Hushan, in my opinion, if the three of you work together, it will be extremely lucky if you can capture Tianhua during the fifth attack, let alone the third attack. Speaking up to this point, Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for LV Hushan to reply and continued speaking. Of the three of you left, Yuan Weiqing's arm is injured and he only has one arm left. It's also the arm that he doesn't use much. In this way, his martial arts will definitely be reduced by more than half. It's already not bad if he has 2 or 3 layers left. LV Hushan, your martial arts aren't high to begin with. Even if you stay behind, you won't be able to do much. Among the three of you, the only one with decent combat ability is Master Zhang. But with just him alone, do you think that you can capture Tianhua during the third attack? Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Master Xue, although my martial arts aren't high, my technique of throwing the thunderbolt pills should be pretty good. I definitely won't cause any problems. Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly said, Master Xue, although my martial arts have been reduced by quite a bit, it definitely won't affect much. I should have at least 60 to 70% left. It should be enough to deal with the current situation. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. Master Xue, you heard what they said, right? There shouldn't be any problems. during the second and third attack. We should be able to capture Etianhua and end this battle. After hearing the three's words, Xue Zhijing frowned. Then, he turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, this battle is mainly for you, to help you stand up again. That's why we have to capture Etianhua. When the battle starts later, you must give it your all. Because if we lose, it won't just be a simple loss. If we can't injure Etianhua quickly, then the unlucky ones will be the few of us. I have no enmity with Etianhua. Even if he can break through my defense, he might not be able to hit me hard. Most importantly, he will definitely be able to break through my defense. His martial arts are high. Even if I use all my strength, I won't be able to stop him. What I want to say now is that once Etianhua breaks through my defense, all of you must be careful. At this point, Xue Zhijing smiled. Actually, my worries might be unnecessary, because all of you are already confident that you can capture Etianhua during the second and third attack. Naturally, all of you won't be in any danger, but I still have to remind all of you to be careful. If you attack Etianhua, he will definitely hate all of you. When he breaks through my defense, he will definitely hit all of you hard. When that time comes, all of you must remember to run. After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. His voice trembled as he said, Hall Master Xue, are you saying that even with your martial arts, you won't be able to stop Etianhua's attack? Xue Zhijing smiled bitterly and shook his head. Etianhua's martial arts are high. It's impossible to stop him. Even I can only block one of his attacks. After that, I'm afraid I won't be able to do anything. When that time comes, all of you are on your own. Chapter 760. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. Hall Master Xue, if Etianhua really rushes over, what should we do? Xue Zhijing shook his head and smiled bitterly. There's nothing we can do. We can only hope that you can capture Etianhua in 2 or 3 attacks. That should solve this problem. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing's expression turned even uglier. He knew very well that his arm was injured, and he did not have much martial arts left. At most, he could only use about 20 to 30% of his original martial arts. LV Hushan's martial arts were not good, and he was the weakest among the 4 of them. Therefore, he could not be of much use. The only person who could fight was Vice Hall Master Zhang. However, could Vice Hall Master Zhang really capture Etianhua in 2 or 3 attacks? Yuan Weiqing didn't have much confidence that the 3 of them would be able to heavily injure Etianhua in just 2 or 3 attacks. What should he do? Yuan Weiqing's forehead gradually broke out in cold sweat. He knew very well that if they could not capture Etianhua in 2 or 3 attacks, they would really be in trouble. Xue Zhijing could only block 1 attack. If they could not injure Etianhua in this period of time, they would have to face Etianhua's anger. Thinking about Etianhua's martial arts, Yuan Weiqing's forehead broke out in more cold sweat. After a while, Yuan Weiqing raised his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. His voice trembled as he asked, Vice Hall Master Zhang, can the 3 of us defeat Etianhua in 2 or 3 attacks? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded confidently and smiled. Yuan Weiqing, don't worry. We should be able to capture Etianhua in 2 or 3 attacks. Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question and continued to speak. Yuan Weiqing, think about it. In the first attack, the 4 of us will attack at the same time. It's not like you don't know Hall Master Xue's martial arts. Even without us, he should be able to seriously injure Etianhua in 3 attacks. If the 4 of us attack at the same time, even if we can't seriously injure Etianhua, we will definitely injure him slightly. As long as Etianhua is lightly injured, he won't be able to move as quickly as usual. This is our chance. If the 3 of us go all out, I believe that while Etianhua's movements are affected, we can definitely defeat him in 2 or 3 more attacks. Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to worry. I've already calculated it. As long as everyone gives it their all, there won't be a problem. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was slightly relieved. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you're confident, I'm relieved." When Zhang Chunren saw Yuan Weiqing's appearance, he sneered in his heart. Just as he was about to speak, LV Hushan suddenly spoke. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I'm still worried. You know that my and Yuan Weiqing's martial arts are far inferior to yours. Even if the two of us go all out, I'm afraid we won't be able to do much. Vice Hall Master Zhang, under such circumstances, can the three of us really defeat Yi Tianhua?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren frowned. He turned to look at LV Hushan and asked in a deep voice, "LV Hushan, don't tell me you don't even believe my words?" LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, it's not that I don't believe you, but Yi Tianhua is really too powerful. I'm afraid that I won't be able to catch him in 2 or 3 attacks. Wouldn't that be terrible?" Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Zhang Chunren to answer his question, he continued, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, if Yi Tianhua goes all out, I'm afraid none of us will be able to stop him. At that time, not only will we not be able to catch him, I'm afraid that the 4 of us will be destroyed by him." Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing became nervous again. He raised his head and looked at Zhang Chunren, wanting to hear his explanation. Zhang Chunren smiled and waved his hand. "LV Hushan, you're thinking too much. Don't worry. Later, you just need to go all out. As for the rest, let me handle it." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan suddenly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I feel that if you want to be safe, you should stay in front and let Hall Master Shui stay behind. That seems to be the case." After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren was a little annoyed. He asked sternly, "LV Hushan, don't tell me you don't believe in my martial arts?" Seeing that Zhang Chunren was angry, LV Hushan hurriedly shook his head and said in a trembling voice, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, that's not what I meant. I believe that your martial arts must be very good, but if Hall Master Shui stays behind, we really have a better chance. Vice Hall Master Zhang, we're all here to catch Yi Tianhua, so as long as it's helpful, we should think of a way." Zhang Chunren frowned. "LV Hushan, my martial arts are not as good as Hall Master Shui's. If I stay in front, I'm afraid that I can't even block one attack. Yi Tianhua will break through the defense line. At that time, wouldn't it be worse?" LV Hushan hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, it's definitely not like that. Don't forget that Yi Tianhua feels guilty towards you. Even if he attacked you, would he be heavy-handed? So I'm sure that with Yi Tianhua's guilt towards you, you can definitely block 2 to 3 attacks from Yi Tianhua. The 3 of us can take advantage of this time to injure Yi Tianhua. At that time, won't we be able to catch him?" After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and said slowly, "LV Hushan, this method of yours, if it was in the past, it would work. But now, it definitely won't work." At this point, Zhang Chunren paused, but then he turned to look at Yuan Weiqing. Without waiting for LV Hushan to reply, he sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, you also know that because of you, I also offended Yi Tianhua. I'm sure that when the battle starts, Yi Tianhua will definitely go all out when he sees that I'm in front of him. At that time, I definitely won't be able to block his attacks and let him break through my defense line. If things turn out like this, and Yi Tianhua breaks through my defensive line, he will definitely attack you like I said before. At that time, who among you will be able to block his attacks? LV Hushan, if we follow your method, I'm sure that not only will we not be able to catch Yi Tianhua, but we'll all be killed by him. Do you understand?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan sighed. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I know what you said makes sense, but our attacks are too weak. I'm afraid that we won't be able to seriously injure Yi Tianhua in 2 or 3 attacks. Wouldn't that be terrible?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. "LV Hushan, don't worry, there won't be any problems. As long as I'm here, Yi Tianhua won't be able to escape from our grasp." Just as Zhang Chunren finished speaking, Yuan Weiqing suddenly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I think that LV Hushan's words make sense. If we want to catch Etianhua, our attack power must be enough, but it seems that the attack power of the three of us is really not enough. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you and Hall Master Shui change positions, our attack power should be enough, and we'll be more confident in this matter. At this point, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Zhang Chunren's reply. Vice Hall Master Zhang, LV Hushan's analysis of this matter is also very reasonable. Etianhua feels guilty towards you, so he won't be too harsh on you. Although you've raised conditions with him, you haven't angered him much. Therefore, Vice Hall Master Zhang, don't worry. As long as you're in front, Etianhua will definitely not come over. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, Yuan Weiqing is right. If you're in front, we'll be more confident in this matter. After hearing their words, Zhang Chunren frowned and suddenly said, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, you think that my martial arts aren't as good as Hall Master Shui's, right? Hearing this question, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were stunned at the same time. Then they hurriedly nodded. Zhang Chunren sneered. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, I can tell you the truth. The reason why you think my martial arts aren't good enough is because you haven't seen my martial arts. Now, I can tell you that my martial arts are definitely not weaker than Hall Master Shui's. You can rest assured. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were stunned again. Not only were the two of them stunned, but even Shui Zhijing looked at Zhang Chunren with some surprise and disbelief. In the secret thunder sect of the South region, everyone knew that Hall Master Shui's martial arts were the highest. No one could surpass him. Even Zhang Chunren, who was the Vice Hall Master, was definitely not his opponent. But now, Zhang Chunren said that his martial arts were definitely not weaker than Hall Master Shui's. What was going on? After Zhang Chunren said this, his expression changed slightly. He felt some regret in his heart, but since he had already said it, he just said it casually. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, let me tell you, you can rest assured that the three of us will stay behind. We can definitely catch Etianhua. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and asked tentatively, Vice Hall Master Zhang, you're not lying to me. Are you really not weaker than Hall Master Shui's martial arts? Zhang Chunren waved his hand impatiently. LV Hushan, don't ask anymore. In short, you just have to do as I say, understand? LV Hushan saw that Zhang Chunren was a little annoyed and didn't dare to say anything more. He hurriedly nodded. Seeing that LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing didn't dare to speak, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction. He turned to look at Shui Zhijing and said with a smile, Hall Master Shui, since everyone has agreed on these matters, I think it's decided. At this point, Zhang Chunren's tone paused before he continued. Hall Master Shui, I'll have to trouble you to block in front. As long as you can block Etianhua once or twice, we will definitely be able to seriously injure Etianhua. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing suddenly shook his head and said with a smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, since your martial arts are not weaker than mine, then I think this arrangement is somewhat inappropriate. Think about it. Our martial arts are similar. Your martial arts are even stronger than mine, but you don't know the Heavenly Star technique, so in terms of Thunderbolt pill throwing skills, you are definitely not as good as me. In that case, the two of us will switch. You block in front, and I will stay behind with the Heavenly Star technique. Isn't this better? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren's expression suddenly changed. After he reacted, he hurriedly waved his hand. Hall Master Shui, how can this be? Didn't we already agree that you will block in front, and the three of us will stay behind to attack? Shui Zhijing shook his head and said with a smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, the reason why I stayed in front is because the three of you are not high enough. I'm afraid that you won't be able to block Etianhua's attacks, so I stayed in front. But now it's different. Your martial arts are the same as mine, and your Thunderbolt pill throwing skills are not as good as mine. So no matter how you look at it, it's better for me to stay behind, right? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, LV Hushan gritted his teeth and said again, Vice Hall Master Zhang, Home Master Shui is right. If you stay in front, it is indeed more suitable than Home Master Shui. Hall Master Shui's Heavenly Star technique should be more effective at the back. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded. That's right. Vice Hall Master Zhang. If your martial arts are as high as Hall Master Shui's, you are indeed more suitable than Hall Master Shui to stay in front. After hearing the two's words, Shui Zhijing smiled and nodded. Vice Hall Master Zhang. The Heavenly Star technique is not an ordinary technique. As long as you use the Heavenly Star technique to throw thunderbolt pills, you can form an inescapable net in the sky. It can be said that it is extremely powerful. Vice Hall Master Zhang, it is precisely because of this that I said that I will stay behind, and the three of you will block in front. Even if I stay behind alone, with my Heavenly Star technique, I will definitely be able to heavily injure Yi Tianhua. Therefore, Vice Hall Master Zhang is more suitable than me to stay in front. I think this matter is settled, right? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren's heart suddenly became angry. He never thought that things would develop to this point. According to his original plan, Shui Zhijing would stay in front and block Yi Tianhua's attacks, while the three of them would stay behind and throw thunderbolt pills at Yi Tianhua. Zhang Chunren was certain that although Shui Zhijing's martial arts were not as good as Yi Tianhua's, he would definitely not be defeated so easily. As long as Shui Zhijing could withstand 2 or 3 attacks, then the 3 people behind would definitely be able to heavily injure Yi Tianhua during this period of time. However, he had never expected that his words would bring about such a big trouble. He had indeed made a mistake. Chapter 761. Seeing that Zhang Chunren did not answer him, Shui Zhijing asked again, Vice Hall Master Zhang, why aren't you saying anything? Are you unwilling? Hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren hurriedly waved his hand. How is that possible? I'm thinking about what is best for us. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing smiled and asked, In that case, Vice Hall Master Zhang, have you thought of what is best for us? Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. After a while, he smiled and said, Hall Master Shui, in my opinion, it's best for you to stay in the front because Yi Tianhua has a good impression of you. I believe that no matter how good his martial arts are, he will definitely not hit you hard. Therefore, if you stay in the front, you can at least block 2 or 3 of his attacks if there are no accidents. Hall Master Shui, as long as you can block 2 or 3 of Yi Tianhua's attacks, I believe that with the attacking power of the 3 of us, we can definitely seriously injure Yi Tianhua during this period of time. At that time, as long as Yi Tianhua is seriously injured, we will naturally be able to capture him easily. Hall Master Shui, don't you think so? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing shook his head. Vice Hall Master Zhang, if Yi Tianhua is really as you said and won't be too harsh on me, I also believe that the 3 of you can defeat him in 2 or 3 attacks. Speaking of this, Shui Zhijing paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Zhang Chunren to answer his question, he continued. The problem is, will Yi Tianhua really do what you said? Vice Hall Master Zhang, if Yi Tianhua hits me hard, I can honestly say that I definitely won't be able to block 2 or 3 of his attacks. Perhaps I will be defeated in the first attack. If that's the case, Vice Hall Master Zhang, do you have any good ideas? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan hurriedly looked at Zhang Chunren because they also wanted to hear what Zhang Chunren would do if they encountered such a situation. This question was very important because if things were really as Shui Zhijing said, and Yi Tianhua suddenly went crazy and showed no mercy to anyone, then in that state, Shui Zhijing really would have a hard time blocking one of his attacks, let alone 2 or 3. Most importantly, could the 3 people who had attacked Yi Tianhua from behind be able to seriously injure him in such a short time? Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan shook their heads at the same time. They were certain that it was impossible for them to defeat Yi Tianhua in such a short time. If things were as Zhang Chunren said, and Shui Zhijing could block 2 or 3 attacks, then there would be no problem. No matter how weak their attacks were, they would definitely be able to defeat Yi Tianhua in that amount of time. Therefore, the two of them also wanted to know if Shui Zhijing could not stop Yi Tianhua, and if Zhang Chunren had a good solution to solve this problem. This was because once Yi Tianhua rushed over, the three people behind them would be in trouble. Hearing Shui Zhijing's question, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Home Master Shui, you're thinking too much. I can guarantee you that Yi Tianhua will not be heavy-handed with you. You saw what happened just now. Although we have a fierce argument with Yi Tianhua has always been very respectful to you because he doesn't want to cause a fight between the two gangs. Even if we fight, Yi Tianhua will still have some hope in his heart and doesn't want our two gangs to fight. Plus, he has a good impression of you, so he definitely won't be heavy-handed with you." Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing couldn't help but frown and smile bitterly. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, you've already said that we have a fierce argument with Yi Tianhua. How can he be merciful to me? Plus, when we attack him later, the four of us will launch a sneak attack at the same time, and it will be an all-out sneak attack. Vice Hall Master Zhang, the moment we launch the sneak attack, we will announce the start of the battle between us. Although Yi Tianhua doesn't want to start a fight with us, he's no fool. We launched such a fierce attack on him, so he should be able to tell that we're not being merciful. In fact, we're really going to attack him. Vice Hall Master Zhang, under such circumstances, I think even you won't be merciful." After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, Home Master Shui is right. Since we launched a sneak attack on Yi Tianhua from the start, he definitely won't be merciful. What if he breaks through Hall Master Shui's line of defense? What should we do then?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren smiled and waved his hand. "You're all too suspicious. I can guarantee you that Yi Tianhua definitely won't be heavy-handed. Even if we launch a sneak attack on him, he won't be heavy-handed with us." Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued, "LV Hushan, have you forgotten that we launched a sneak attack on Yi Tianhua just now? What happened? Yi Tianhua didn't go crazy. Although Yuan Weiqing was crippled by him. What was the reason for that? When Yuan Weiqing launched a sneak attack on Yi Tianhua accidentally injured him. If what you said is true, doesn't that mean that Yi Tianhua was going to attack us just now? But he didn't. He still didn't want to start a fight between the two gangs. Do you understand? LV Hushan, don't worry. Yi Tianhua definitely won't attack us until the last moment." Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was slightly relieved. Just as he was about to speak, Yuan Weiqing suddenly spoke. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, this sneak attack is different from the previous one. In the previous sneak attack, everyone didn't use their full strength. But this time it's different. Everyone has to launch a sneak attack with all their might. Under such a fierce attack, could Yi Tianhua still maintain his composure and hold back?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said with a smile, "Yuan Weiqing, if it were you, you might not hold back. But how can you compare to Yi Tianhua? Don't forget that Yi Tianhua is the boss of the South County Shadow Alliance. Everything he does has to be based on the South County Shadow Alliance. Through what happened just now, we can clearly see that Yi Tianhua doesn't want to cause a fight between the two gangs. Or at least, he doesn't want to cause a fight between the two gangs now because they aren't ready yet. It's precisely because of this reason that I think that Yi Tianhua definitely won't attack us too heavily, because he has a glimmer of hope that we can resolve this matter peacefully." At this point, Zhang Chunren paused and sneered before continuing. "As long as Yi Tianhua wants to resolve this matter peacefully, he definitely won't attack too heavily." Yuan Weiqing asked in disbelief, "Do you mean that our full-strength sneak attack on Yi Tianhua won't arouse his anger?" Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. "Absolutely not, because our first sneak attack will definitely stun him. At that time, I'm afraid that before he has time to think, our second attack will arrive." Hearing this, LV Hushan suddenly smiled and said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang is right. Our first full-strength sneak attack on Yi Tianhua should be able to catch him off guard no matter how high his martial arts are. Just like what Vice Hall Master Zhang said, when he only cares about dodging, our second attack will arrive. In this situation, maybe Yi Tianhua won't even have the chance to counterattack and will be injured by our continuous Thunderbolt balls. At that time, before Yi Tianhua can rush over, he'll have already been defeated. In this case, what are we afraid of? After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren nodded with satisfaction and said with a smile, LV Hushan, you're right. If we're lucky, we can really catch Yi Tianhua without any injuries. After hearing the two's words, Yuan Weiqing also smiled. Just now, he only cared about being afraid, but he forgot that the Thunderbolt balls in their hands were definitely not to be trifled with. Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Xue Zhijing and said with a smile, Home Master Xue, since that's the case, I think we should follow this plan. You stand in front while the three of us stay behind. When the time comes, you might not even be able to touch Yi Tianhua before he's captured by us. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing frowned. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this is just your guess. Don't forget, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are very high. Do you really think that you can easily defeat him with the Thunderbolt balls in your hands? After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded and said with a smile, Home Master Xue, if it's just one or two Thunderbolt balls, it shouldn't be possible to defeat Yi Tianhua. But don't forget, the four of us have a lot of Thunderbolt balls. If we throw all of them out, I don't believe that Yi Tianhua can block them. After knowing that he was safe, Yuan Weiqing also relaxed. After hearing the conversation between the two, he also said with a smile, Hall Master Xue, I just forgot how powerful the Thunderbolt balls in our hands are. Now that I think about it, Yi Tianhua really has nothing to be afraid of. No matter how powerful he is, can he be more powerful than our Thunderbolt balls? LV Hushan also hurriedly said, Halt, Master Xue. With the power of the Thunderbolt balls, as long as one Thunderbolt ball hits Yi Tianhua, we will win this battle. If we throw so many Thunderbolt balls at once, I don't believe that Yi Tianhua can dodge all of them. Seeing that the two of them supported him, Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. Home Master Xue, since everyone thinks so, I think this matter should be settled like this. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing nodded and said with a bitter smile, Since you think that we can catch Yi Tianhua this way, I naturally have no objections. Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to reply and continued speaking. But there's something I want to say. If our plan fails this time, not only will we not be able to catch Yi Tianhua, I'm afraid that all of us will be killed by Yi Tianhua. Don't forget, Yi Tianhua's martial arts are much higher than ours. Once he dodges the Thunderbolt ball's attack and breaks through my defense line, I'm afraid that other than me, all of you will be killed by him. So I think that you should think about it carefully. If you think that Vice Hall Master Zhang's idea is feasible, then let's do it. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked and hurriedly asked, Hall Master Xue, why is it that after Yi Tianhua breaks through your defense line, the three of us will be killed by him, but only you won't be killed by him? Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, Xue Zhijing sighed and said slowly, Yuan Weiqing, if you were in this situation, who would you attack first? Xue Zhijing paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued speaking. Yuan Weiqing, I think that if it were you, you would also attack the person who poses the greatest threat to you first, right? I blocked Yi Tianhua from the front, so I naturally couldn't throw Thunderbolt balls. So at that time, I wasn't as much of a threat to Yi Tianhua as you guys were. I'm sure that when Yi Tianhua saw the three of you throwing Thunderbolt balls at him from behind, he would definitely hit me to the side first, then rush towards you guys to resolve the crisis first. Yuan Weiqing, if things had turned out that way, wouldn't the three of you be in danger? Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing couldn't help but frown. He suddenly realized that Xue Zhijing's analysis made sense. When the sky was filled with Thunderbolt balls, Yi Tianhua would definitely kill the person who threw the Thunderbolt balls first, because only then could he reduce the number of Thunderbolt balls in the sky. As for Xue Zhijing in front, He wasn't a threat to Yi Tianhua. Only the person who threw the thunderbolt balls from behind could pose a threat to him. Under such circumstances, even Yuan Weiqing himself would probably choose to attack the three people at the back first. Seeing that Yuan Weiqing's forehead was covered in cold sweat, Xue Zhijing knew that Yuan Weiqing believed him, so he continued speaking. Yuan Weiqing, the reason why I said that among the four of us, I'm the only one who won't be killed by Yi Tianhua is because Yi Tianhua only wants to attack the three people at the back, so his attack on me will naturally be much weaker. I'm afraid that when Yi Tianhua attacks me, his first thought will be that I'm blocking his path. As long as he hits me to the side, it'll be fine. It's because of these reasons that I think that if we attack Yi Tianhua and fail, I'm afraid that I'll be the only one left. Xue Zhijing turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, your arm is injured. When you fight later, you must be careful because Yi Tianhua's first target is very likely to be you. Do you remember? Chapter 762. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing's expression changed. He suddenly realized that even if he hid at the back, he might not be safe. Seeing the change in Yuan Weiqing's expression, Zhang Chunren hurriedly said, Yuan Weiqing, you don't have to be too nervous. Hall Leader Xue is just guessing. Although Yi Tianhua's martial arts are strong, he definitely won't be able to block our attacks if the four of us work together. So you don't have to worry about it, understand? Yuan Weiqing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and frowned. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, if Hall Leader Xue's guess is right, and that kind of thing will really happen, then what should we do? Seeing Yuan Weiqing so timid, Zhang Chunren was a little annoyed. Yuan Weiqing, if you're worried about your safety at the back, then you can go to the front and block Yi Tianhua with Hall Leader Xue. What do you think? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing's heart was in a mess. If it was as Hall Leader Xue said, staying at the back was not safe, but if he went to the front, it would be even more dangerous. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly sighed and turned to LV Hushan, asking in a low voice, LV Hushan, what do you mean? LV Hushan naturally understood Yuan Weiqing's thoughts. He turned to Zhang Chunren and smiled. Vice Hall Leader Zhang, if it's possible, Yuan Weiqing and I will stay at the front to help Hall Leader Xue. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren was stunned. After a while, he smiled and said, LV Hushan, if you're willing, I won't object. Hearing Zhang Chunren's answer, LV Hushan quickly turned to Xue Zhijing and smiled. Hall Leader Xue, since Vice Hall Leader Zhang doesn't object, Yuan Weiqing and I will stay by your side and help you block Yi Tianhua. What do you think? Hearing LV Hushan's words, Xue Zhijing couldn't help but frown. LV Hushan, of course I'm happy that you two can help me, but the three of us are at the front, and only Vice Hall Leader Zhang is left behind. With his attack power, do you think he can seriously injure Yi Tianhua? Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, LV Hushan was stunned. Only then did he realize that Vice Hall Leader Zhang alone could not defeat Yi Tianhua. Hall Master Xue, what should we do? Xue Zhijing didn't answer LV Hushan's question. Instead, he turned to look at Zhang Chunren and said with a smile, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I remember that your martial arts aren't bad either. I don't think we can do this. You lead the two of them in front, and I'll stay behind. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I believe that by relying on my Heavenly Star technique, I can definitely defeat Yi Tianhua in a short period of time. What do you think? After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren's brows involuntarily furrowed. He did not expect that the matter turned back around again. Zhang Chunren would never agree to stay at the front. However, if he didn't stay at the front and only relied on himself, it seemed that he really wouldn't be able to defeat Yi Tianhua. Seeing Zhang Chunren lowering his head in silence, Xue Zhijing smiled and said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, although your martial arts are not inferior to mine, in terms of attack power, you are inferior to me. Actually, you staying at the front is just perfect, and my Heavenly Star technique is also suitable for staying behind to attack. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what do you think of this idea? Just as Xue Zhijing's voice fell, LV Hushan suddenly opened his mouth and said, Vice Home Master Zhang, Home Master Shui is right. Although your martial arts are high, you don't know the Heavenly Star technique, so your long-range attack power is naturally insufficient. If Home Master Shui stays at the back, it should be the most suitable. Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly said, Vice Home Master Zhang, you stay at the front to block Etianhua. The two of us will support from the side. I believe that with our martial arts, Etianhua will definitely not be able to break through our direction easily. This will also buy some time for Home Master Shui to defeat Etianhua as soon as possible. After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren's heart was even more annoyed, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only cough lightly and slowly speak. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, not only is my martial arts not inferior to Home Master Shui's, even my thunderclap pill throwing technique is definitely not inferior to Home Master Shui's. Speaking up to here, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he didn't wait for the others to answer him and continued speaking. You've only heard of the Heavenly Star technique. Have you heard of the Scatterflower Hand? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was suddenly shocked. He asked in a trembling voice, Vice Home Master Zhang, could it be that you know the Scattered Flower Hand? Zhang Chunren nodded and said proudly, although the Heavenly Star technique is incomparably powerful compared to the Scattered Flower Hand, it is still somewhat lacking. Speaking up to here, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, looked around, and then slowly asked, say, since I know the Scattered Flower Hand, is it suitable for me to stay at the back? Hearing this, LV Hushan hurriedly nodded and said with a smile, since Vice Hall Master Zhang knows the Scattered Flower Hand, of course there is no problem for you to stay at the back. Yuan Weiqing also hurriedly nodded. That's right. If Vice Hall Master Zhang knows such powerful martial arts, I believe that if he stays at the back, he will definitely be able to defeat Etianhua as soon as possible. After hearing the two's answer, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction. He turned his head to look at Shui Zhijing and asked with a smile, Hall Master Shui, this time there should be no problem, right? Shui Zhijing frowned and nodded. At this moment, he was somewhat puzzled. Why would Zhang Chunren hide his martial arts? In the past, he had always thought that Zhang Chunren's martial arts were inferior to his, and his technique was also inferior to his. But now it seemed that Zhang Chunren was intentionally hiding it. It was not that his martial arts were inferior to his, but that he was hiding it from him, not letting him know that he knew superior martial arts. What was going on? Zhang Chunren did not care what Shui Zhijing was thinking. Seeing him nod, he directly said, Hall Master Shui, since it's like this, everyone should have no objections. Why don't we settle on this plan? Hall Master Shui, you take the two of them to stay at the front and block Etianhua. As for me, I will stay at the back and use the Scattered Flower Hand. What do you think? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Shui Zhijing helplessly nodded. He originally wanted to rely on his Heavenly Star technique to stay at the back and attack Etianhua, but he did not expect Zhang Chunren's technique to be superior to his, and his original plan naturally fell through. To be honest, Shui Zhijing really did not want to fight Etianhua head-on because he knew that Etianhua's martial arts were too high. Even if the four of them worked together, they would definitely not be a match for Etianhua, especially as mentioned in the beginning. If he stayed at the front to block Etianhua, Shui Zhijing was certain that he would definitely be smashed to pieces by the angry Etianhua. But he never expected that even if he knew the Heavenly Star technique, he could only helplessly stay at the front. Thinking of this, Shui Zhijing turned to look at Zhang Chunren and sighed. Vice Hall Master Zhang, do you really not regret your decision to fight Etianhua? After hearing Shui Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren nodded and turned to look at Yuan Weiqing with a smile. Hall Master Shui, in order to help Yuan Weiqing stand up again, even if I have to fight Etianhua, I will not hesitate. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was touched. Vice Hall Master Zhang, thank you for taking care of me. Don't worry, after this battle is over, I'll practice my martial arts properly and won't embarrass you. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, me too. If I also have the chance to train, I will definitely not disappoint you." Hearing their answers, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction and turned to look at Xue Zhijing with a smile. "Xue Zhijing, I think there should be no problem. Everyone's fighting spirit is so high. They will definitely be able to catch Etianhua." After hearing everyone's words, Xue Zhijing bitterly smiled and shook his head. "Could it be that you all really think that as long as we catch Etianhua, all the problems will be solved?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Zhang Chunren could not help but frown and said impatiently, "Home Master Xue, since things have already developed to this point, I think we should act quickly." Xue Zhijing sighed and turned to look at Yuan Weiqing. "Yuan Weiqing, do you know why there are so few experts in the world?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing shook his head. "I don't know either." Xue Zhijing sighed. "I know that there are so few experts in the world because of many reasons. For example, martial arts talent. If you do not have a high level of martial arts talent, no matter how hard you work, you will definitely not be able to train to a high level of martial arts. Also, the spiritual medicine that we talked about just now. Without the support of large amounts of spiritual medicine, it is almost impossible to rely on oneself to train. Most importantly, if you do not have a high level of martial arts, of course, you will not be able to train to the level of a knight." At this point, Xue Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but immediately after, he did not wait for Yuan Weiqing to reply and continued. "Yuan Weiqing, if you want to train to a peerless martial arts, all of these conditions are indispensable. And now, it can be said that we do not have any of these conditions. Everything has to be solved by capturing Etianhua. However, have you ever thought that even if we capture Etianhua, can he definitely solve these problems?" After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing frowned and probed, "Hall Master Xue, didn't Vice Hall Master Zhang already say that as long as we capture Etianhua, we will force Etianhua to agree to our conditions and then use the South County Shadow Alliance to do these things for us?" After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, Xue Zhijing shook his head with a bitter smile. "Yuan Weiqing, if Etianhua can do these things, why didn't he do it in the past? Cultivating to the level of the one-armed Saber King is something that many people dream of. Do you think that Etianhua does not want to reach that level?" At this point, Xue Zhijing's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to reply, he continued, "Impossible. Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, if there is even the slightest chance, Etianhua will definitely not give up. So, let me tell you, it is because Etianhua knows that there is no chance that he will give up." After hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing could not help but frown. He turned to look at Zhang Chunren and probed, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, Hall Master Xue said that there is no chance. What do you think?" Hearing Yuan Weiqing's question, Zhang Chunren suddenly sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, if Etianhua gave up, then let me ask you, how did he cultivate his martial arts?" At this point, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment, but then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he continued. "Yuan Weiqing, let me tell you, if Etianhua did not have any unexpected gains, he would definitely not have the martial arts he is now. Do you understand? However, Etianhua did not use all his strength to search for these things. If he used all his strength to search, who can guarantee that he would not succeed? Yuan Weiqing, don't forget who Etianhua is. He is the boss of the South County Shadow Alliance. I think even if I don't say it, you should know how strong the South County Shadow Alliance is, right? Yuan Weiqing, with such strong strength, if you use all your strength to search, do you think that there is no chance of success?" After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing suddenly sighed. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, although there is a chance of success, there is a higher chance of failure, right?" Zhang Chunren shook his head. "Hall Master Xue, as long as there is a 50% chance, I think many people will give it a try." Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren turned to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked with a smile, "Yuan Weiqing, Although the chance is not high and there is only a 50% chance, in order to help you stand up again, I am willing to give it a try. Yuan Weiqing, are you willing? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. He nodded vigorously. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I am willing. You are willing to do this for me. How can I not be willing? LV Hushan, who was on the side, was also moved by Zhang Chunren's words. He said with some emotion, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I am also willing. In order to pursue that dream, I am willing to give it a try. Hearing their answers, Zhang Chunren nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, as long as the two of you are willing, I am also willing to give it a try for the two of you. After saying this, Zhang Chunren turned to look at Xue Zhijing and said with a smile, Hall Master Xue, look, even if they know that the chance is not high, they are willing to give it a try. Hall Master Xue, shouldn't we give them a chance? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing sighed secretly. Vice Hall Master Zhang, since you don't regret it, as the Hall Master, I naturally won't refuse you. After saying that, Xue Zhijing turned around and looked at Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan as he nodded with a smile. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, since you're willing to give it a try, I promise you that I'll help you fulfill your wish. Chapter 763. Xue Zhijing paused for a moment before continuing. Wait a moment. You have to be careful because Tianhua's first target might be you. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing was shocked. His voice trembled as he asked, Hall Master Xue, why is it me again? Hall Master Xue sighed. Yuan Weiqing, you ambushed Tianhua just now. Did you think that Tianhua would forget about it? Hearing this, LV Hushan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He was originally worried that Tianhua's first target would be him, but after hearing Xue Zhijing's words, he realized that it made sense. No matter how Yuan Weiqing explained, it couldn't change the fact that he had ambushed Tianhua. LV Hushan felt that if he was ambushed, he wouldn't let the person who ambushed him go either. Therefore, it was certain that Tianhua's first target would be Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing frowned. If that's the case, then I should stay behind. Xue Zhijing shook his head. Yuan Weiqing, if you stay behind, you'll be in more danger without anyone to help you. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Hall Master Xue, if that's the case, then won't I definitely be killed by Tianhua? Xue Zhijing shook his head and smiled. Yuan Weiqing, that's not necessarily the case. If Vice Hall Master Zhang's attack power is enough to heavily injure Tianhua in 1 or 2 attacks, you shouldn't be in any danger. Your safety depends on our attack power from behind. Do you understand? Even if Tianhua's first target is you, if he can injure Tianhua in 1 or 2 attacks, then his attack power will definitely drop. If he attacks you, then with me and LV Hushan holding him back, there shouldn't be any problems. Hearing Xue Zhijing's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly turned to look at Zhang Chunren. Vice Hall Master Zhang, are you confident that you could defeat Tianhua in 1 or 2 attacks? Zhang Chunren smiled and nodded. Yuan Weiqing, don't worry. With my scattering flower hand, there won't be a problem. Hearing Zhang Chunren's reply, Yuan Weiqing was slightly relieved. Deputy Hall Leader Zhang, I'll leave it to you then. Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, don't worry. I won't let you be in danger. After saying this, Zhang Chunren turned to look at Xue Zhijing and said with a smile, Hall Master Xue, in that case, shall we begin? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Xue Zhijing sighed secretly and said with a bitter smile, well, since everyone has no objections, let's start. Xue Zhijing turned to look at the impatient Tianhua and lowered his voice. Wait a minute, I'll count to 3. The 4 of us will attack together and launch the first attack on Tianhua. Got it? After everyone heard Xue Zhijing's words, they all agreed. Xue Zhijing took out the thunderclap pills and began to count them slowly. 1, 2, 3. When Xue Zhijing spat out the last number, The four experts of the South County Tamlay sect suddenly threw the thunderclap pills in their hands at Tianhua using various methods. In an instant, the sky was filled with small thunderclap pills. It was like a thin layer of black fog that shrouded Tianhua. These thunderbolt pellets weren't thrown out carelessly. Instead, they used various methods to spread these thunderbolt pellets evenly across the sky. It could be said that no matter where Tianhua hid, he would definitely not be able to escape the danger of being caught. Seeing that his side's attack was so fierce, Yuan Weiqing, who was standing in front, immediately felt relieved. He knew how powerful the thunderclap pills were. He did not believe that Tianhua could dodge these thunderclap pills. Perhaps Tianhua would be defeated in this attack. Next, everyone just needed to reap the fruits of their victory. Thinking of this, Yuan Weiqing was a little excited. As long as he caught Tianhua, he would be able to cultivate high-level martial arts and consume those high-grade spiritual herbs, as well as herbs that could change one's martial arts talent. At the thought of this, Yuan Weiqing's emotions surged. He didn't expect that he would have such good luck after coming here. It was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. Yuan Weiqing's mouth was already curled into a smile. As long as Tianhua was injured by the explosion, his expression would immediately turn into a maniacal laughter. Looking at the densely packed thunderclap pills in the sky, LV Hushan was even more excited. If he succeeded this time, the benefits he would obtain would be unimaginable. Precious spiritual herbs, peerless martial arts, and herbs that could change one's martial arts talent. Every single one of them was a treasure that everyone yearned for even in their dreams. Today, he had the chance to obtain them. LV Hushan's martial arts was the weakest among the four of them. Naturally, he was unwilling. However, so what if he was unwilling? The truth was right in front of him. He could only accept it helplessly. However, things were different now. As long as he caught Tianhua, he would have a chance to change this helpless situation. Eating precious spiritual herbs and cultivating high-level martial arts would make him even more satisfied. If he could consume those legendary spiritual herbs that could change one's martial arts talent, the results would be even more satisfying. All of this could be realized as long as the thunderclap pills fell from the sky. LV Hushan's eyes were wide open as he stared at the thunderclap pills in the sky. His heart was beating rapidly as he waited for the moment of happiness to arrive. LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were all smiles, but Xue Zhijing, who was beside them, was frowning. Although he did not know how Tianhua would avoid the thunderclap pills, he was certain that Tianhua would not be defeated so easily. The thunderclap pills had already filled the sky and formed an inescapable net that prevented Tianhua from retreating or escaping. However, Xue Zhijing did not believe that he would be defeated with just one attack. What he wanted to see now was how Tianhua would avoid the thunderclap pills in the sky. Of course, he did not doubt that Tianhua could avoid the thunderclap pills in the sky, but he also knew that it was almost impossible to avoid so many thunderclap pills without suffering any injuries. Therefore, Xue Zhijing was certain that Tianhua would definitely be injured. The only difference was how serious the injury would be. Just as everyone was guessing, they suddenly heard Tianhua roar. There was a flash of light in front of their eyes. The next moment, the thunderclap pills in the sky exploded like a chain reaction. In the smoke, Tianhua roared repeatedly. Sword light flashed in the smoke from time to time. The sound of explosions rose and fell as the smoke almost enveloped the entire mountain peak. Seeing the situation, Yuan Weiqing finally looked up and laughed wildly. This was because he knew that they had succeeded. No matter how strong Tianhua's martial arts were, he would probably be seriously injured in the midst of so many thunderclap pills. LV Hushan, who was at the side, was so excited that even his hands were trembling. The thunderclap pills in the sky were like an inescapable net that completely covered Tianhua. In the midst of so many explosions, Tianhua would definitely not be able to escape. Xue Zhijing's expression did not relax at all. His gaze was fixed on the area of the explosion. He kept glancing back and forth, trying to check the situation. Soon, the sound of the explosion finally stopped. The smoke produced by the explosion was so thick that the figure opposite could not be seen clearly. Etienne's figure had long disappeared into the smoke. Other than the roar just now, there was no other sound coming from the smoke until now. Yuan Weiqing turned his head to look at LV Hushan and asked in a trembling voice, "LV Hushan, did we succeed?" LV Hushan nodded, but soon shook his head. His hands clenched tightly into fists as he gritted his teeth and said, "We should have succeeded. With so many thunderclap pills, I don't think anyone can avoid it, right?" Just as the four of them were puzzled, suddenly, their eyes widened at the same time. They had a look of disbelief as they stared at the figure walking out of the thick smoke. Etienne, seeing the person's face clearly, Shui Zhijing gritted his teeth and said. After saying that, he was stunned on the spot. Although Etienne, who walked out of the thick smoke, looked a little battered, Shui Zhijing was sure that he did not suffer any injuries. How is this possible? Just as Shui Zhijing was stunned, Zhang Chunrin suddenly shouted from behind, "Don't just stand there, quickly do it." Saying this, Zhang Chunrin had already grabbed a handful of thunderclap pills and threw it at Etienne. After this handful of thunderclap pills was thrown out, they immediately spread out evenly in the air, blocking Etienne's path forward. Seeing Zhang Chunrin take action, Shui Zhijing and the other two reacted. Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan shouted as they took out thunderclap pills and threw them at Etienne randomly. Although the number of thunderclap pills that the two of them threw out was not small, they did not know any techniques and just threw it randomly. Hence, in terms of power, it was definitely not as powerful as Zhang Chunrin's thunderclap pills. Shui Zhijing was stunned for a moment. He took out a handful of thunderclap pills and threw them towards the sky, blocking Etienne's left and right. Seeing so many thunderclap pills flying towards him again, Etienne roared and wanted to rush forward. However, the front was already blocked by Zhang Chunrin's thunderclap pills, and there were thunderclap pills thrown by Shui Zhijing on his left and right. Helpless, he could only push off the ground with his feet and quickly retreat, dodging the thunderclap pills that filled the sky. Seeing Etienne retreat, Zhang Chunrin hurriedly shouted, "Everyone, don't stop. Continue attacking. Don't let Etienne rush over." Actually, at this moment, even if Zhang Chunrin did not remind them, everyone knew what to do. Everyone was very clear that since they had decided to attack Etienne, they also had to have the thought of being attacked by Etienne. At this moment, they could only attack with all their might. Other than that, they had no other choice. The four of them took out thunderclap pills and threw them into the sky again. Etienne gritted his teeth and roared, "Do you really want to start a war between the two gangs?" After hearing Etienne's words, Shui Zhijing was shocked. He never expected that Etienne could still find the time to speak with so many thunderclap pills attacking him. Didn't this mean that Etienne was still not using his full strength? If that was the case, then the result of this battle. Thinking of this, cold sweat gradually dripped down Shui Zhijing's forehead. If his guess was correct, then if they continued to attack and completely infuriated Etienne, then none of the four of them would be able to leave this place today. Thinking of this, Shui Zhijing wanted to stop the battle. He hurriedly turned his head to look at Zhang Chunrin, only to see Zhang Chunrin throwing a handful of thunderclap pills at Etienne. Shui Zhijing was shocked and hurriedly turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan. However, he saw that the two of them were also gritting their teeth and throwing thunderclap pills with their eyes wide open. Seeing this scene, Shui Zhijing sighed. He knew that a battle was unavoidable. Next, they could only go all out and try to defeat Etienne. Just as Shui Zhijing took out a handful of thunderclap pills and was about to throw them, he suddenly heard Etienne's angry roar. "Since you're forcing me, then don't blame me for being impolite." As Etienne said this, Shui Zhijing saw Etienne's aura suddenly increase. The long sword in his hand kept swinging in front of him. The long sword carried boundless strength as it kept swinging in front of Etienne. Every time it swung, The tip of the sword would hit a thunderclap pill and send it flying far away. Seeing this scene, Shui Zhijing finally understood how Yi Tianhua had managed to escape from the sky full of thunderclap pills. Yi Tianhua's sword was extremely fast. Everyone only saw the sword light constantly flickering in front of their eyes. Soon, the thunderclap pills they threw out were hit and flew far away before exploding. Seeing how powerful Yi Tianhua was, Yuan Weiqing was immediately shocked. His hand did not slow down. Just as he was in a daze, Yi Tianhua hit a thunderclap pill back and it flew straight at him. Seeing this scene, Yuan Weiqing was immediately shocked. He wanted to turn around and escape, but it was too late. He could only shout and wave his hand to block it. This thunderclap pill was extremely fast. Shui Zhijing wanted to help him block it, but he did not have a long sword in his hand. It was already too late for him to draw his sword to save Yuan Weiqing. He could only watch as the thunderclap pill flew towards Yuan Weiqing. Boom! Perhaps because Yi Tianhua had hit it, this thunderclap pill had already exploded when it flew not far from Yuan Weiqing. The thunderclap pill's explosion was very powerful, and the location of the explosion was very close to Yuan Weiqing. Yuan Weiqing felt a wave of heat hit him in the face. Following that, a huge force smashed towards him like a hammer. Yuan Weiqing was forced to take a step back by this force. He screamed and fell to the ground. Although Yuan Weiqing was injured by the explosion, no one was looking at him. Everyone was quickly throwing thunderclap pills at Yi Tianhua. When LV Hushan heard Yuan Weiqing scream, more cold sweat flowed down his forehead. He felt his heart beat faster, and his breathing was so rapid that he could not breathe. LV Hushan grabbed a handful of thunderclap pills and realized that his hands were trembling. He gritted his teeth and reached out to wipe his cold sweat. Then, he threw the thunderclap pills in his hand at the distant Yi Tianhua. Chapter 764. Yi Tianhua unleashed his full power. Sword light flashed in front of him, and countless thunderbolt pills were hit by the tip of the sword and were sent flying. Not long after, more than half of the thunderbolt pills in the sky were sent flying. Seeing this, Shui Zhijing was shocked. But at this point, he could only attack with all his might. Yuan Weiqing struggled to get up, gritted his teeth, and continued to attack Yi Tianhua. Zhang Chunren suddenly shouted, "Hall Master Shui, LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, hurry up and restrain Yi Tianhua." Hearing Zhang Chunren shout, Shui Zhijing and the other two were stunned and turned to look at Zhang Chunren. The moment the three of them slowed down, their attack power dropped significantly. Yi Tianhua cleared all the thunderclap pills in front of him and charged over with a roar. Just now, everyone was discussing who should be in front and who should stay in the back. They didn't think too much about it. Now that they saw Yi Tianhua really rushing over, the three people who planned to be in front broke out in cold sweat. Seeing this, Zhang Chunren sneered, "Hall Master Shui, I'll leave the front to you." As he spoke, Zhang Chunren had already taken 7 to 8 steps back. Then he grabbed a handful of thunderbolt pills and threw them at Yi Tianhua. Hearing Zhang Chunren shout, Shui Zhijing gritted his teeth and turned to Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan. "Stand over here and prepare to block Yi Tianhua." Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan heard this and broke out in cold sweat. But there was nothing they could do. They hurried to Shui Zhijing's side. Yi Tianhua rushed over and shouted, "Shui Zhijing, since you dare to attack, don't blame me for being impolite." As his voice fell, a sword light rose in front of him and circled above Shui Zhijing and the other two. Seeing Yi Tianhua's ferocity, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were shocked. They were still planning who Yi Tianhua would attack first. But now, there was no need to plan. Yi Tianhua attacked the three of them at the same time. No one could escape. Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan stood on either side of Shui Zhijing. Seeing Yi Tianhua's fierce attack, they were shocked. They didn't even think about it. They immediately separated into two sides and ran far away. Yi Tianhua didn't give chase. The attack that was originally aimed at the three of them immediately converged into one and attacked Xue Zhizhing. Xue Zhizhing saw the fierce attacks and wanted to dodge. He was in a hurry because he was standing in the middle. No matter which direction he ran to, he couldn't escape. Helpless, Xue Zhizhing could only grit his teeth and shout. He threw out a thunderclap ball with his left hand and held his sword with his right hand. He attacked with all his strength, wanting to block Yi Tianhua's attack. However, Yi Tianhua's attack was too ferocious. The thunderbolt balls that Xue Zhizhing threw out were all sent flying by the dazzling sword light. Yi Tianhua sneered and continued to attack Xue Zhizhing without slowing down. It was also at this moment that Zhang Chunren's attack arrived. The thunderbolt balls that filled the sky didn't attack Yi Tianhua from the front, but enveloped everything behind Yi Tianhua. Yi Tianhua was shocked when he saw this attack. He shouted and attacked Xue Zhizhing with all his strength. At the same time, he rushed forward, wanting to use the momentum to dodge the attack behind him. Although Xue Zhizhing was inferior to Yi Tianhua, his full strength naturally couldn't be underestimated. Just as the two sword lights collided, Xue Zhizhing immediately let out a scream and was sent flying by a force. Yi Tianhua took a step forward and dodged the thunderbolt balls behind him. Just as he was about to charge forward again, Zhang Chunren had already attacked again. This time, Zhang Chunren attacked with both hands. In the blink of an eye, thunderbolt balls filled the sky and enveloped Yi Tianhua like an inescapable net. Looking at the thunderbolt balls in the sky, Yi Tianhua sneered. Sword light rose again, and the thunderbolt balls that filled the sky were sent flying again. It was also at this moment that Xue Zhizhing, who was sent flying, charged over again with his sword. Xue Zhizhing knew very well that in this battle, he could only give it his all. Once he admitted defeat, he would definitely die. Although he was heavily injured just now at this point, he could only grit his teeth and charge again. Hearing Xue Zhizhing charging over, Yi Tianhua didn't even turn his head. He only slashed with his sword like a stream of light towards Xue Zhizhing. How could Xue Zhizhing be Yi Tianhua's match? He screamed again and was sent flying. Xue Zhizhing wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He wanted to get up, but his entire body was in extreme pain. Yi Tianhua's powerful attack had already broken his arm. He tried a few times, but couldn't stand up. Yi Tianhua sent Xue Zhizhing flying with his sword. Just as he turned to look at Zhang Chunren, he suddenly saw a thunderbolt ball flying towards him. Yi Tianhua roared, "Zhang Chunren, are you still not going to admit defeat?" As his voice fell, sword light rose again and struck the thunderbolt ball flying towards him. Boom! Just as the thunderbolt ball hit the tip of the sword, it suddenly exploded. Yi Tianhua was taken aback. He cursed inwardly because he could already sense that this thunderbolt pill was different from the previous thunderbolt pills. Just as he had this thought, a powerful explosive force hit him hard. Yi Tianhua only felt that the explosion was too strong. He couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood as his entire body was sent flying. "Ha! Yi Tianhua, I'll show you the power of my thunderbolt ball." Yi Tianhua was sent flying. As soon as he landed on the ground, he immediately staggered to his feet. But at this moment, he only saw a figure flash in front of him. Zhang Chunren had already appeared in front of him. Zhang Chunren only sneered. He immediately waved the long sword in his hand and attacked Yi Tianhua. Yi Tianhua was shocked. He wanted to block, but his injuries were too serious. His movements couldn't help but slow down. Just as he raised his sword, he felt a pain in his arm. He couldn't help but let go of his sword, and the long sword fell to the ground. Yi Tianhua took a few steps back. Just as he was about to speak, Zhang Chunren had already struck him with a palm. Zhang Chunren's palm was powerful. Yi Tianhua had just been hit when he felt a series of crackling sounds coming from his body. An intense pain instantly rushed into his mind. He couldn't help but cry out in pain as he fell to the ground. Seeing Yi Tianhua fall, Zhang Chunren sneered and didn't chase after him. "Yi Tianhua, you didn't expect to fall into my hands, right?" Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, Yi Tianhua coughed a few times before roaring, Zhang Chunren, what do you mean by this? Aren't you afraid of causing a fight between the two gangs? Hearing Yi Tianhua's roar, Zhang Chunren sneered. Yi Tianhua, your injuries are so serious. Do you still have the strength to speak so loudly? As he spoke, Zhang Chunren suddenly kicked Yi Tianhua's body. Ah! Yi Tianhua screamed and rolled a few times on the ground before lying on his back, gasping for breath. Zhang Chunren slowly walked in front of Yi Tianhua and sneered. Yi Tianhua, I'm sorry. You asked for it. As he spoke, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan, who were hiding at the side, saw that there was no danger and hurriedly ran back. Yuan Weiqing slowly walked to Zhang Chunren's side and said awkwardly, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, Zhang Chunren turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and suddenly sneered. Yuan Weiqing, I really didn't expect you to be able to run so fast, even though you're injured. It's really beyond my expectations. Hearing this, Yuan Weiqing suddenly blushed and felt even more embarrassed. He hurriedly explained, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, I didn't. I just saw that Yi Tianhua was coming too fiercely, so I wanted to avoid him and then support him from the side. I didn't want to run away. As soon as Yuan Weiqing's voice fell, LV Hushan on the other side also hurriedly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, Yuan Weiqing is right. I did the same. I wanted to avoid him and then find a way to contain Yi Tianhua. Speaking of this, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer him and continued. However, although our plan was good, we didn't expect Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts to be so high. We wasted our efforts. If we knew Deputy Hall Master Zhang's martial arts were so good, we wouldn't have thought of such a plan. As long as we attacked together, we would naturally be able to catch Yi Tianhua. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing naturally didn't want to be outdone. He hurriedly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, your martial arts are really high. You're not inferior to Hall Master Shui at all. In fact, you're even better. After hearing their words, Zhang Chunren nodded. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, no matter how nice your words are, I still remember that when you wanted to run away just now, only Hall Master Shui was in front of you. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, didn't I say just now? That was only one of our plans. We wanted to retreat a few steps to the side and then attack Yi Tianhua from the side. Speaking of this, Yuan Weiqing paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer him and continued. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you also know that our martial arts aren't high. If we fight with Yi Tianhua like this, I'm afraid we'll be defeated in less than one move. In order to better restrain Yi Tianhua, the two of us came up with this idea. We'll support him from both sides. The effect will definitely be better than charging directly. LV Hushan also hurriedly said, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, Yuan Weiqing is right. We have no choice. We know that our martial arts are low, so we can only use this strategy to better help Hall Master Shui. After hearing their answers, Zhang Chunren waved his hand. Yuan Weiqing, no matter how you explain, you still ran away just now. Don't forget that the plan we discussed just now was for you to block Yi Tianhua from the front. We never said that you would restrain Yi Tianhua from both sides. Do you understand? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he didn't wait for Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan to answer him. He sneered and continued. Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, since you didn't abide by the agreement just now, then of course I can also not abide by it, right? Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan were taken aback and almost cried out loud. Yuan Weiqing asked in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, don't tell me that you don't want to help me with my martial arts practice? LV Hushan also hurriedly said, Yes, there's still me. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you must not forget me. Just now we agreed that as long as we catch Yi Tianhua, you will help us with our martial arts practice. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren sneered. LV Hushan, you still have the face to say that. If I didn't have a thunderbolt bomb, I'm afraid that because the two of you ran away first, this big matter would have been ruined. Do you understand? Humph humph. Now that things have come to this, you ran away so quickly, and now you still have the face to come back and ask for benefits. I really don't know what you're thinking. Hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan's face turned red, but he quickly reacted because he knew very well that this was not the time to be embarrassed. If he didn't quickly argue for what was right, then there would be no more chances. Running away just now was indeed a little disgraceful, but that was not important. What was important was that they had successfully caught Tianhua. Up until now, LV Hushan was very clear that as long as Zhang Chunren agreed, they would have a chance to practice martial arts. This opportunity was an opportunity that many people dreamed of, an opportunity that many people could not get even if they begged for it. How could he let it go? Therefore, even if Zhang Chunren mocked and ridiculed him, he would absolutely not care. LV Hushan was very clear that once he could practice the kind of high-grade martial arts, his martial arts would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Once his martial arts improved, it would be easy to take revenge. Therefore, no matter what unpleasant word Zhang Chunren said now, LV Hushan would absolutely not care. What he wanted was for Zhang Chunren to agree to his conditions and help him practice martial arts. LV Hushan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, raised his head to look at Zhang Chunren, and said with a forced smile, "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, we agreed that as long as we block in front, after we catch Tianhua, you will help us practice martial arts. You can't deny this matter." Speaking of this, LV Hushan hurriedly turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and asked quickly, "Yuan Weiqing, I didn't say anything wrong, right? That's what Deputy Hall Master Zhang said just now, right?" Hearing LV Hushan's question, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded, turned his head to look at Zhang Chunren, and said quickly, "Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you said just now that you will help us practice martial arts. You can't deny it, right?" After hearing the two's words, Zhang Chunren frowned and sneered. "Yuan Weiqing, LV Hushan, then let me ask you, when you were running just now, did you think about practicing martial arts?" Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but immediately after, without waiting for LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing to answer his question, he sneered and continued, minding his own business. "LV Hushan, Yuan Weiqing, if we didn't succeed by luck this time, I'm afraid the unlucky ones would be us." Chapter 765. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, Yuan Weiqing blushed and hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Master Zhang, I really didn't mean that. Please believe us." Zhang Chunren sighed. "Yuan Weiqing, I originally wanted to help you this time because I pitied you, but you really disappointed me." Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused for a moment, but then he continued without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to answer him. "Yuan Weiqing, are you doing this for my painstaking efforts? For you, I didn't hesitate to fight with Tianhua. For you, I didn't hesitate to fight with the South County Secret Thunder Sect and the South County Shadow Alliance. Yuan Weiqing, what did you do? You ran away when you saw danger, and now you're asking me for benefits. Then tell me, if you were me, would you agree?" Wanting to see the benefits in his hands fly away, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly said, "Vice Hall Master Zhang, I really didn't run away just now. If you don't believe me, you can ask LV Hushan. He can prove it for me." After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan was about to speak, but Zhang Chunren sneered. "LV Hushan proved it for you. Then let me ask you, who proved it for him? During the battle, just now, I was watching from the back. He wasn't slower than you. As soon as Tianhua rushed over, the two of you immediately turned around and ran." Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren turned to look at LV Hushan and asked with a sneer, "LV Hushan, I'm right. Although your martial arts aren't high, you're really fast when you run." After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan blushed and hurriedly waved his hand. "Vice Hall Master Zhang, this is a tactic. Did you forget what I said just now? That's it. I wanted to retreat to the back and attack Tianhua from the back to share some of the pressure for Hall Master Shui. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly nodded. That's right, that's it. I thought the same as LV Hushan. We both adopted a flexible combat method and prepared to attack Tianhua from the back. Hearing that the two of them still refused to admit it, Zhang Chunrin was a little annoyed. He sternly shouted, I originally wanted to give you a chance. As long as you admit it, I will help you. But now that things have come to this, you actually still want to quibble. Then I'm sorry, you'll have to think of a solution for your own problems. After hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were shocked at the same time. They couldn't help but look at each other. After a while, Yuan Weiqing clenched his teeth and said in a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, I'm really sorry. You also know that my arm is injured and I only have 10 to 20% of my martial arts left. Even if I still have my martial arts, it would be impossible for me to stop Tianhua. That's why I was scared and ran away. Vice Hall Master Zhang, please forgive me this time. If something like this happens again, I will never run away. Please believe me. After hearing Yuan Weiqing's words, LV Hushan hurriedly said, Vice Hall Master Zhang, me too. My martial arts are not high. If I fight with Tianhua head-on, I'm afraid I won't even be able to use one move before I'm killed by Tianhua. That's why I was a little scared. At that time, I didn't think much and ran away subconsciously. Vice Hall Master Zhang, please forgive me this time. Hearing that the two of them admitted their mistakes, Zhang Chunrin nodded and said with a smile, We are all from the Tanlei sect in the South County. How can I make things difficult for you? As long as you admit your mistakes and listen to me in the future, I will definitely help you with all my strength. Hearing this, LV Hushan and Yuan Weiqing were overjoyed and hurriedly thanked him. Thank you, Vice Hall Master Zhang, for forgiving our mistakes. We will definitely repent in the future and will never do it again. Vice Hall Master Zhang, I swear that I will listen to you in the future. I don't dare to disobey you. After hearing their words, Zhang Chunrin suddenly sneered, Are you really willing to listen to me? Hearing Zhang Chunrin's question, Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan hurriedly nodded. We will definitely listen. We will definitely not disobey you. Vice Hall Master Zhang, just say the word. We will definitely do as you say. Zhang Chunrin turned his head and looked at the battlefield. Then he turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, Yuan Weiqing, go and get Tianhua's sword now. Hearing Zhang Chunrin's order, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly responded and quickly walked over to pick up the long sword that had fallen in the distance. Vice Hall Master Zhang, Tianhua's sword has been retrieved. Zhang Chunrin shook his head, but did not take the long sword that Yuan Weiqing handed over. Instead, he turned his gaze to Shui Zhijing in the distance. After a while, Zhang Chunrin suddenly sneered, Yuan Weiqing, take this sword and kill Hall Master Shui. What? Pa! After hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, Yuan Weiqing suddenly exclaimed. He was so frightened that his hand trembled and the sword in his hand fell to the ground. Vice Hall Master Zhang, what did you say? I didn't hear you clearly. Zhang Chunrin turned his head to look at Yuan Weiqing and said with a smile, So you didn't hear me clearly. It's okay, I'll say it again. This time, you have to listen carefully. At this point, Zhang Chunrin paused for a moment. Then, without waiting for Yuan Weiqing to reply, he continued. Yuan Weiqing, I want you to take this sword and kill Hall Master Shui. Do you understand? What? Yuan Weiqing was frightened by Zhang Chunrin's words and took a step back. He asked with a trembling voice, Why? Why do you want to do this? Zhang Chunrin smiled and said, Yuan Weiqing, I'll forget about what happened just now. Although you ran away at the last minute, I'll let it go this time on account of how pitiful you are. This is a chance I'm giving you. As long as you do it, I will do my best to help you practice martial arts. Yuan Weiqing, are you willing to do it? After hearing Zhang Chunrin's words, Yuan Weiqing hurriedly shook his head and said with a trembling voice, No. How can I do this? How can I hurt Hall Master Shui? This definitely won't do. Hearing Yuan Weiqing's answer, Zhang Chunrin suddenly sneered and turned to look at LV Hushan. LV Hushan, what about you? Are you willing to do this for me? Hearing Zhang Chunren's question, LV Hushan's forehead was covered in cold sweat. Even his hands were trembling. Vice Hall Master Zhang, this won't do. Hall Master Shui is our Hall Master. How can we do this? At this point, LV Hushan paused for a moment, but he didn't wait for Zhang Chunren to answer his question. Instead, he forced a smile and continued to speak. I know, Vice Hall Master Zhang. This must be a test for us, right? Don't worry. We will never dare to run away in the future. We will definitely listen to you. Before LV Hushan finished speaking, Zhang Chunren waved his hand and interrupted him. LV Hushan, don't say these useless things. I just want to ask you, are you willing to do this for me? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was even more surprised. He couldn't help but pay attention to Zhang Chunren's expression, trying to figure out what Zhang Chunren meant. Was he testing them? Or did he really want to do this? Thinking of this question, LV Hushan's forehead was covered in more cold sweat. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said in a trembling voice, Vice Hall Master Zhang, if you want to test us, can you do something else? Once Hall Master Shui recovers, he will definitely not let us off. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren frowned and asked in a deep voice, LV Hushan, I will ask you again. If you agree to do this for me, I will do my best to help you practice martial arts and make you a figure like the one-armed Saber King in South County. LV Hushan, tell me, are you willing to do it for me? Of course, I won't force you. Everything depends on your own will. Do you understand? Hearing this and seeing the coldness in Zhang Chunren's eyes, LV Hushan was shocked. He suddenly realized that Zhang Chunren seemed to really want to do this. Zhang Chunren wanted to kill Hall Master Shui. Zhang Chunren wanted him to kill Hall Master Shui for him. Understanding this, LV Hushan felt that his breathing became a little rapid. He knew that although Zhang Chunren said it nicely, he had to be willing to do everything. However, LV Hushan was sure that if he dared to refuse, he would not end well. He had seen Zhang Chunren's martial arts just now. Perhaps it was not as good as Hall Master Shui's, but it was definitely not much worse. With Zhang Chunren's current martial arts, it was easy to deal with the two of them. In other words, if the two of them dared to refuse Zhang Chunren's conditions, then they would never be able to leave this mountain. Thinking of this, LV Hushan raised his head and looked at Zhang Chunren. He asked in a trembling voice, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, can we do something else? This kind of thing is really impossible to do. Speaking of this, LV Hushan's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for Zhang Chunren to answer his question, he lowered his voice and continued to speak. Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you also know that Hall Master Shui is a good person and treats us very well. But if you ask us to do this thing, is it really difficult? Deputy Hall Master Zhang, if you ask us to do something else, don't worry. Even if we have to go through fire and water, we will definitely do it for you. Hearing LV Hushan's answer, Zhang Chunren sneered and shook his head. LV Hushan, I don't care what you do. I just want you to do this for me. LV Hushan, are you willing or not? Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren's tone paused for a moment. But then, without waiting for LV Hushan to answer his question, he continued to speak. LV Hushan, as long as you do it, you can get something that many people dream of. Think about it. There are so many precious spiritual herbs and peerless martial arts manuals. Most importantly, there are also medicinal herbs that can change one's martial arts talent. There are so many good things that some people might not even have seen in their entire lives. LV Hushan, as long as you agree to do this for me, all these good things will belong to you. How about it, LV Hushan? The opportunity is right in front of you. If you don't seize it, I can guarantee that you will definitely regret it in the future. After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan was stunned. He subconsciously turned his head to look at Shui Zhijing in the distance. For a moment, he began to hesitate. If he listened to Deputy Hall Master Zhang, he would really be able to get the things that others dreamed of but couldn't get. But if he did this, his conscience wouldn't be able to accept it. Shui Zhijing was honest and treated his subordinates very well. Therefore, The people of the secret thunder sect in the South County had a good impression of Shui Zhijing. LV Hushan was really hesitant to make a move against such a person. What should he do? LV Hushan really didn't know what to do. He could only frown and lower his head without saying a word. Yuan Weiqing, who was on the side, was even more shocked when he saw LV Hushan's frown. He never expected that this matter would turn out like this. He thought that as long as everyone successfully captured Yi Tianhua, everything would be resolved. However, although Yi Tianhua was successfully captured, things had turned out like this. Deputy Hall Master Zhang actually wanted to make a move against Hall Master Shui. The most important thing was that he didn't do it himself, but asked Yuan Weiqing and LV Hushan to do it. Yuan Weiqing didn't know if LV Hushan would make a move, but he was sure that he would never do it. Everyone in the secret thunder sect in the South County knew how high Hall Master Shui's martial arts were. Although Hall Master Shui was injured now, who could guarantee that Hall Master Shui couldn't move now? Even if Hall Master Shui only had 10% of his strength left, he would probably kill Yuan Weiqing if he was caught off guard. Under such circumstances, how could Yuan Weiqing dare to make a move? If Yuan Weiqing could think of this, so could LV Hushan. He looked up at Zhang Chunren and said with a wry smile, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, you also know that Hall Master Shui's martial arts are very high. Even if we want to make a move against him, we're definitely not his match. Therefore, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, please test us in another way. We will definitely do our best to complete it. We won't let you down. After hearing LV Hushan's words, Zhang Chunren smiled and shook his head. LV Hushan, so this is what you're worried about. I understand your thoughts, but you don't have to worry about it now. Although Hall Master Shui's martial arts are very high, he has been hit twice by Yi Tianhua and has been seriously injured. I believe that even if he has a little strength left, it is absolutely nothing to worry about. You just have to make a move. LV Hushan, don't forget that I am by your side. If Hall Master Shui makes a move against you, I will protect you. Do you understand? After hearing Zhang Chunren's words, LV Hushan frowned. After a while, he gritted his teeth and asked tentatively, Deputy Hall Master Zhang, your martial arts are very high. Since Hall Master Shui is seriously injured, he is naturally no match for you. Why don't you deal with him yourself? After hearing LV Hushan's question, Zhang Chunren sighed and looked at Shui Zhijing in the distance. He said slowly, because I promised that I would not hurt him. Speaking of this, Zhang Chunren paused and continued, it is precisely because of this reason that I can't make a move against him directly. Instead, I want you to do it. Do you understand? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.